of the Merrimack School Board. If you could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Item number 2 is public participation. Anyone from the public who would like to speak, please state your name and address for the record. We have microphones at the tables and at the main table. Just make sure the green light is on.
Good evening. My name is Scott Adler, 3 Deerwood Drive in Merrimack. I have 2 things I would like to comment on. The first is on the back of the agenda. I'm not sure if I wanted to email Andy, if I'm supposed to email Cinda, or if I'm going to email Cinda, if I should email Andy. I think we've got some typos there. Secondly, I, as well as other members, taxpayers of Merrimack, are growing increasingly concerned with the budget and the proposed increases that are going to be discussed in the coming months. And we would like to have a better understanding as to the budget process. We would like to understand when the last time there was any sort of an audit done, and if there are opportunities that can be utilized outside of the budget for any sort of funds to help pay for some of the expenses. Thank you.
If there is no one else that would like to speak under public comment, going once, going twice, I will close public comment. We will go on to item number 3, which is the update on Universal Design for Learning, UDL, as we are calling it, from James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School. So I will invite to the table Principal Marcia McGill, and if you could please introduce your team who is presenting. Thank you and welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting us to speak about our update on the Universal Design for Learning at the Upper Elementary School. We began the process last year. We were fortunate to begin, as did the middle school, work throughout the year, and then be able to continue through this year. I'd like to first of all introduce our team. I'm Marcia McGill, the principal of the Upper Elementary School. Our facilitator for our UDL team is Dr. Nicole Rowe, our language arts coordinator. Also on that team through last year would have been our special ed coordinator, Nancy Romero, 5th grade teacher, Kathy Goodman, 6th grade teacher, Courtney McDonald, as well as some new members we have with us this evening who we've added onto our team in our second year, and that would be our assistant principal, Bill Morris, 5th grade teacher, Louis Mayu, and special educator in 5th grade, Lisa Hargraves. Did I miss anybody who's here with us this evening? No, I think I got everyone. And as you can see, we have other members on our team, but I wanted to introduce the people that were with us this evening. Last year, we began the year with our focus being on the deep dive to the guidelines of UDL. So we spent the year really diving into the information and really learning about what Universal Design for Learning is. We learned a lot about how we remove barriers so that all children will benefit from the learning that we're providing. And this year, our focus is on design for expert learners. So we're doing a lot of work and studying on how we work with expert learners or help to develop or design for expert learners. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to one of our teachers who's going to talk about the impact in the classroom, Kathy Goodman.
Hi, so I'm Kathy Goodman. I teach 5th grade. And as Marcia said, our goal is to create these expert learners that are purposeful, motivated, strategic, and goal-directed. To support this in my classroom, I have been working on having my students put together portfolios. So the portfolios, my goal for the end of the year is that students will have this collection of work that will show their growth over the course of the year, supporting them being goal-directed learners. My hope is that they'll help run their conference with their parents in the spring to recognize their strengths, their struggles, and how they overcame that and what they did as learners this year. To help develop self-assessment and reflection in my classroom, my students reflect pretty much daily, but we have a very formal time weekly on Fridays. They think about their growth mindset over the course of the week. They think about how well they followed directions, the effort they put in. They also take their mail, their corrected work from the week, and they go through it. They look for something that they're really proud of to hang up on our world showcase in the classroom. They also choose something to put into their portfolio. So they self-select a piece of work. So this is an example here from one of my students. They every week they think about why they're choosing this piece of work to go in their folder. And I was reading through them this week, and I just chose they have to write on a sticky note like why they chose it. So one student had said, I chose something because at first I wasn't good at simple subjects and simple predicates, but now I am. Another example was, I chose this because I wanted to do better at knowing my spelling patterns. Another example is, I'm getting better at multiplying decimals. So they really vary the choices that the students choose to put in. To guide goal setting in my classroom, we have a hashtag goal setters poster, hangs up in the front of the room. The students have a self-selected goal. They reflect on this each week during that portfolio process, and they think about, have I met my goal? How did I meet my goal? Who helped me meet that goal? If they haven't met their goal, they write themselves a little note on their desk like, keep working, you can do this, and how are you going to do that? Every week, they also fill out like a weekly reflection about their learning, and that goes home to the parents for them to kind of focus. So these are some of the things I've implemented in my classroom to help my students in becoming purposeful, motivated, strategic, and goal-directed. And now I'm going to turn it over to Courtney, 6th grade.
I am Courtney McDonald. I teach 6th grade. I'm going to talk about the multiple ways that I encourage flexibility in my classroom. As Kathy said, the goal of UDL is to create expert learners who are purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, and strategic and goal-directed. The rubric itself is broken down into 3 main sections. Action and expression, which is the how of the learning process, engagement, which is the why, and representation, which is the what of the learning process. As I began learning about the UDL framework, it changed my thinking as an educator. I realized that I had to loosen my type A reins. Usually letting go of that control is really difficult. But I realized that releasing that control brings the most positive results. During the 2018-2019 school year, my students and I together began exploring the type of learning flexibility that allowed them to be the best learners they could be. We found that student choice during independent work and different seating options in our learning space were 2 ways that really allowed them to feel successful. The flexibility of student choice and learning space that goes on in my classroom falls under many of the different UDL guidelines. As you can see on the PowerPoint, my students were given a project where they were asked to create a model that represented their understanding of text features. They were asked to define why text features are used in the informational text and choose 15 text features that they needed to define and represent using real-life examples. Using the guidelines, flexibility and choice, and action and expression really do go hand in hand. Under one of the subcategories, the focus is on how the instructor can vary the methods that the student navigates and responds to the assignment. Our UDL coach, Bill Wilmot, explained early on that when you're offering flexibility in representation, the expectations and rubric should never change due to the variability of demonstration of the goal. The ways that the students present the material should. I allowed my students to represent their understanding of text features by creating a PowerPoint or creating an anchor chart using the materials that were gathered. So these are some examples of the anchor charts and the PowerPoints. And as you can see, they're so different in their finished product. But they just came out. I'm so proud of them. They're so proud of themselves. Flexibility and choice also falls under the engagement portion, which is the why. The focus of that is how the instructor can foster collaboration and community within the learning environment and facilitate personal coping skills and strategies through self-regulation. I myself, growing up, was not one of those students who learned best sitting in a desk. I found it rather confining. And that's one thing before this that I really never took into consideration. So I set expectations early by letting students know that they are to work collaboratively with students who they feel will allow them to grow as learners. That doesn't mean they're sitting next to and working with their best friend. They're really taking into consideration who they feel would bring the best out in them. This has been so successful. Throughout the day, students work with math partners where they're expected to talk through their learning and rely on each other to gain a better understanding of the given task. During reading and writing, students are encouraged to use stools, sit at my kidney table, sit on the floor, and stand if they feel that's the way they learn best. I've even had students who need motor breaks work in a plank in the front of the room, dance in the back, the floss was his thing, and stand at a windowsill, all while staying engaged in what we're doing as a class. Dr. Rowe happened to be subbing for one of my classroom, during one of my reading classes, and she can speak to what one of my boys said to her.
So the moment that I walked into the classroom, the student said, "Dr. Rowe, I just want to let you know that I lay on 2 chairs and that's the way that I learn best." So it was really interesting because the child was ready to advocate his needs, and he in fact was very right. We were doing a project, a collaborative project, and he took 2 chairs, laid on them with his belly, and he had his work on the floor, and he just worked through it. And it was very important for him to make sure that as a substitute in the classroom that I understood that that was something that he's identified, and he advocated for himself for that. And it wasn't distracting at all. It was awesome.
Yeah, he loved it. Now I'm going to pass this mic to Mr. Mayu.
So one of the pieces of UDL that we talk about as a team and we try to practice is before the kids even walk into the classroom, we identify what are the barriers in the lesson or the learning for that day, or even in assessment. What are the barriers that we can eliminate right from the beginning? I did ask Mrs. Bonds if I'd be able to approach. I want to show you the map test that comes from the publisher of our program. And as you look at the paper, and you're not an anxious 10-year-old, it may look okay, but there's some of our kids who have anxiousness, and when they have to do work someplace and then transfer answers, this can be quite overwhelming. And so I have 5 identified students that I was making a test for that would be a little bit kinder for them. And what I did is took away 1 column on each page, giving them room to work right next to it. And I was walking back from the copier, and I was looking at it, and I was very happy with how it came out. And it dawned on me, what's good for one can benefit all. And I went back to the copier and I made an entire class set. And the feedback I got from the kids after taking this is the Unit 4 test, was that they liked this much better. And they didn't have to look for where they did their work when they were trying to double check, because they had that extra space. So we took away the barrier for anxious kids, and in doing so realized that removing that barrier for everyone, whether they're identified or not, is really one of our UDL goals.
Thank you, Louis. We also have learned what's good for one may benefit all in the realm of teacher learning. As a curriculum leader in our building, the language arts coordinator, I have the opportunity to work with all of our teachers and help them grow their practices in English language arts. And so one opportunity that I have is to meet with each of my PLTs once a month and to work on new learning. And we always have called this our professional dialogue, and it's part of professional development. And as I'm learning more and more about UDL and fostering lifelong expert learners, I've really switched my focus from professional development to professional learning sessions. I always have a scope and sequence. It's systematic, it's purposeful. I hope that it's motivating. But one thing that's very new for me is that it's customized. So previously to my learning with UDL, I would research what was most important for them to learn. What were some of the methods that other professional development specialists found to be highly effective? And what I've learned from UDL is that what's good for one group might not be the best thing for another group. So a couple very simple changes have made all the difference in the world. So in a professional dialogue session with data, previously you would see me working with the teachers in our computer lab. It's very easy, the computers are set up, but if you think about a computer lab, it's designed for individual learning. I mean, each person is right in front of the computers are in rows, and that was harder to bring a sense of collaboration back to the meeting. And so one thing that I found to be more effective was to switch our space. We're very lucky that all of our PLTs have access to laptops, and so when we're doing work now with technology, we're working in a office conference room where we can sit around a table. Now, the office conference room is very, very warm often, and I've learned that learning tools aren't just your paper, your pencil, your whatever, your tool of technology. They're also your comfort level in the space, how you learn best, like Courtney talked about. So I will start my sessions off with saying, here are tools for learning. If it's warm, please feel free to get up and crack the window or stand by the window. If you feel more comfortable learning during the session or you can't see, please get up. Stand near the screen. I can put on captions if we're watching a video. Here are some different tools and fidgets if you want to keep your hands busy. Lots of different things that we've added to the meeting, so not only to engage the teachers in the learning, but to make sure that they feel like they're in a space that's conducive to their own learning style. Another thing that we have done with being all together and being in this space is thinking about what do teachers need. So Courtney talked about a rubric and how variability doesn't change a rubric. The same happens with professional learning. I have a goal that's set. The last professional learning session that I did was to work with our STAR data catch. It's our tool that we use to assess all of our students in reading and math, and that tool has changed, and now it looks a little different than it previously looked. So I wanted to make sure that all of the teachers had an understanding of how to use the data in STAR. My goal was to make sure that everyone left with knowledge to access the data that they needed to move their students forward. Different teams needed different sorts of data. Different teams needed different reports. So I started off with a mini lesson, the things that they needed to know how to access, and then I said, what do you need next? What reports do you need to look at to help to move your students forward in tiered instructional practices? What might you be using during parent-teacher conferences? And interestingly, the sessions were all a bit different. The goal did not change for our professional learning, but the sessions looked different to achieve that goal because teachers had different levels of knowledge. I had one teacher who I had worked with previously who had sorted out her teachers or her students into different groups based on the teachers they would be working with for TIA, our tiered instructional approach. And so that team had an understanding of how to disaggregate data in a way that other teams didn't. So I could move that team forward to a different place for some new learning. So again, the goal was the same. The outcome was relatively similar, and I was able to meet their needs so that the best thing after you take up some time for a teacher is to hear them say, thank you so much, that was really great, because teachers' time, that's like the gold standard. So if you're using their time, you hope that it's going to be motivating and engaging, purposeful, systematic, and now customized. So that has been a really wonderful thing that we've learned from UDL, and how UDL not only spans what's happening in the classroom, but also what's happening in our world and our educational environment. And Nancy's going to talk a little bit more about professional learning.
Hey there. So the root of special education is to educate diverse learners in a way that allows each one of them to learn at the highest level of independence and in the least restrictive environment, which really ties well with UDL and all of the options and choices and things that we're learning about to push them forward and grow them as learners, making them, as Courtney said, purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable and strategic and goal-directed. So the team of special educators within our building collaborate daily, minutes, each time. They go into a classroom, they're working with the classroom teachers to facilitate that for not just identified students, but all learners within our building. So I like to think that the streamlined approach with the math, some of that collaborative effort maybe drove a little bit of that to seek that knowledge and to refine the pages that the students were presented, and the flexibility that's offered in Courtney's classroom as an example, working with the special education team that she works with on a daily basis, helped with some of that, and then Kathy and the goal-directed learning also, that team had an integral role in helping those students be successful. Within our own special ed team, we are continually learning and looking at this rubric that UDL has for us. And we try to focus on many areas that are going to help our students, but also we want to just kind of the nature of the beast of the upper elementary school is to grow that executive functioning of our students. So that's kind of a special pet project study area of our special education team that we discuss and look at different books and webinars and things to grow our knowledge in that area that we can then take back to the teachers in our building to help our students.
Great. Thank you, Nancy.
So we'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to share a little bit about how we've grown through our learning about the UDL process. And if you have any questions, we'll see if we could answer them for you.
Thank you. I will open it up to the right. I see Cinda. I see Andy so far.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I did have a question. Well, first of all, we've had a few updates over the last several board meetings on the UDL, in our district. And one of the questions that I'd like to ask you tonight is, what is the role of data in UDL at the upper elementary school?
I use, particularly in math, I use both informal and formal data. We're lucky enough in 6th grade to have 2 days to teach our math lessons. So the first day is a day that we use as guided practice and instruction. And at the end of each first day, I have my kids take an exit slip. And based on that exit slip, I'm able to sort them into different groups for the next day to use as math stations. And that's able to target exactly where each student needs and grow them as learners on their own level. And so that's just a small way in my own classroom I'm able to use that data. One of the things I can speak to about the professional dialogue that Dr. Rowe talked about is our group wanted to know exactly how STAR data can link to the SAS assessment. And Dr. Rowe was able to show us how we could pull a report up that breaks down by each standard exactly where your student falls. I have never seen that before, and it's something that I not only use myself, I share with my students. They're just as much of a learner, and they're taking an active role. And so we together look to see, okay, this is where you fall here. What can we do? Where do you need to go from here? And that flexibility of UDL really helps me target where they need and move them forward with them in the driver's seat. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
Andy?
So I always ask the same question when we have a review like this. How and at what point do you determine whether the use of UDL longer term, not within a particular subject or lesson, is having a positive effect or the positive outcomes that you're trying to achieve?
So as Courtney previously mentioned, I talked a little bit about it, UDL gives us a framework. Our goals don't change. So our goal right now is to always see a positive impact in the area of reading, in the area of math, and all of the content areas that we are teaching. And so we're constantly looking at our data, and what we hope to see is for progressions through our quantitative data, but also in our qualitative data. So the work that Kathy is doing with her students with goal setting and really gathering a lot of anecdotal feedback, timely feedback, and data to see what comes next. So all of that is adding to our understanding of what's happening with UDL. And we're having many more conversations about goals and achieving goals. And so we look, one, to data, one, to anecdotal information that we're gathering, soliciting feedback from teachers. I think the thing that's the most powerful about UDL is that we are removing barriers, and some people may say, oh, so you're removing barriers, or you must be making it easier. No, not at all. In some ways, Courtney and I were having a conversation about this earlier today. We had a UDL meeting. We feel like it's becoming very rigorous because we're allowing students to achieve levels that are much greater because the barriers are removed. Hopefully, we will see an impact in our data, our anecdotal data. Also in the students' response in engagement. We're walking through the classrooms, we take note of our students' engagement, and we have conversations with them. And Kathy was talking about a student who chose to work on spelling and to put a piece of spelling in their portfolio that wasn't necessarily a successful piece. It was a piece that reflected where the student was at this point and where the student needs to go. So opportunity to see growth would be to look at that child's goal, and when Kathy's reflecting with that child and hopefully continuing to work on that growth mindset, we'll see the progression just in that one child of the success through that spelling pattern.
Yeah, that I guess the bottom line, you can't answer this question here, but I think that when people listening hear about UDL and how we're incorporating it in, I think they're going to ask, are our students, as they progress out of 5th grade, out of 6th grade, out of 7th grade, picking up things more completely, more challenged? Students that may have been left behind before are now more engaged. And I know a lot of those are intangible. They're more gut feel, but at the end of the day, the students ultimately leaving the school district are going to be better prepared either for college or for whatever vocation. You may not see it in test scores, but you'll see it in sort of the rounded ones. So I think one of the challenges for all the schools that are going through UD, at least in my view, is we need to be able to prove to people that what we're doing is having an effect over a period of time, right? So you can look at data within individual students the way you described, but I think there's an overarching success that would be good to somehow be able to derive from all this as you go in time.
You heard already, I'm a new member to the team this year, and we do something called educational rounds where members of the team observe other teachers implementing lessons. And one of the things that hit me when I was observing in Mrs. McDonald's class earlier this year was one of the barriers she removed was at the top. She gave options for kids who needed the challenge to go beyond what the lesson did. And that struck me so much because we do worry about the struggling learners, and we worry about those that need to go one step forward. But what about those kids that are ready to go 3 or 5 steps forward? And her lesson was set up so that there was one of the options they could choose was to go beyond just the scope of the lesson. They had choices they could make for how much guidance the material offered, but then she had one for those that really needed to take this to the next place, and that struck me as a new member of the team. It's like, wow, it's not just removing barriers for kids that need that removed, it's removing that top barrier for kids that need to go beyond. And I found that very powerful as a new member of the team to observe that.
You made me think about one more piece of evidence that's very important for teachers as expert learners. When we engage in our instructional rounds, we observe each other. Everyone has the opportunity to be observed at least once throughout the course of the school year. And we collect data. There are very factual statements. We don't make judgments. We write down what we see. And at the end of our time together, we take sticky notes and we paste them all over the wall of all of the data that we've collected. And then we start to sort our sticky notes. So today we were engaged in instructional rounds and we sorted evidence. And so the sticky notes have pieces of evidence from the different classrooms that we're in. It's all anonymous. And we collect evidence on like student choice, student engagement, motivation, what'd you say? Relevance. And as we're gathering this data, we start to then sort out and figure out where does this fall in our UDL guidelines? What is very prominent and what do we also now need to think about? What do we need to work on? And so we establish a new goal. So for us as a UDL team, we start to find trends. Wow, we had 100 pieces of evidence of goal setting throughout these different observations. We're really finding a lot of evidence in this area. We didn't see as much evidence perhaps in student stamina. And so that might become our next goal. So we are constantly checking ourselves, checking our own learning, finding evidence to support what we hope to be true. We know that we have certain focused areas and goals. And then we really have the opportunity to reflect on that once all that evidence is collected. So that's another way that we grow as a team and look forward to working with all of our teachers to start thinking about evidence and how you incorporate UDL into the classroom.
I just wanted to say, I think today, I'm sorry. Today with our leader, Bill Wilmot, had asked, our question was, based on this evidence, what does a Merrimack high school senior look like based on this? Like, what will our learners have with them in their toolbox when they leave? And so that's where I think Nikki said, like, we look at that evidence and this is where our students, are based on what we're doing in our classrooms. And like I said, and she said, we're working on, well, what are we missing? What do we need to work on? So that kind of goes there too.
And I think bottom line, UDL is giving students a voice. One thing I've really noticed in my classroom within the last 2 years is I've never had kids advocate for themselves the way that they are. They're telling me what they need, and they're using the resources way beyond even 3-4 years ago what we had set up in our classroom. And because of that, they're comfortable in their learning environment. They're able, I think as kids, struggle time is scary. And one thing I've noticed is our kids are able to fight through a struggle now. And it's because they're feeling safe. It's because they're feeling in control of their own learning. And so going forward, I think that's what we're going to see. We're really going to see more students advocating for their needs, more students speaking up about what isn't working, what is working. And that's so powerful. That's so powerful. Having these kids speak up for what they need in their education, that's what really where it's going and what we're seeing.
Mark?
So I just want to just add to that and say that, it's really important to to talk about the greater context, which is that the college and career ready standards that have been in place now for several years, they have that a term for a reason, college and career ready. It acknowledges that not every student is going to graduate from K-12 and go to college. Many of them are going to have other choices, at least initially. Many of them are just going to go straight to work. And then the challenge is, how is the public school system preparing students if they make that decision? And there has been a lot of partnering between the public schools in New Hampshire through organizations like the School Administrators Association, the Principals Association, perhaps even the School Boards Association, where business people have been talking to us about the kinds of things that they need students graduating to be able to do. And it's not all content driven. In fact, more and more what you hear employers tell us, this is directly employers tell us, is we need students who can problem solve. We need students who can ask for help. Sounds like a silly thing, but a lot of times an employee struggles in his or her cubicle, or if they're working from home, they don't necessarily know an answer to a problem, and they cannot be successful and assume that I have to solve it on my own. So they have to have a proclivity to be able to say, this is what I don't get. Can you help me with that? What are the tools that I need to use, and where would I find them in order to be successful at the job I have, which in many cases doesn't even exist right now. Our first graders are going to be doing jobs that don't literally exist right now. And so it's not irrelevant to say that the college and career ready standards that we're really accountable for make us accountable for way more than whether you can add, subtract, divide, multiply, and read a complete sentence. That's the basis, but it's more than that. And so one of the things that I think UDL is really providing a framework for us to do is which never gets assessed and never makes a headline, but it's to try to prepare students to be able to be resilient, to problem solve, to work through a task to its conclusion. And all of those things are the things that I think you're hearing, and not just the upper elementary school teachers, because it's middle school as well, and UDL is now impacting all of our schools. But I think that the greater context of the college and career ready standards, college and career ready standards, can't be ignored. That's a significant context. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, I think we had the Business Industry Association of New Hampshire here a couple of years ago following our School Boards Association Delegate Assembly, because they were the keynote speakers about students coming out and the soft skills that the workforce needs that they don't have coming out of traditional high schools all over the state. So that's something that we actually addressed at our table a couple of years ago, coming off of that Delegate Assembly. And now we're actually seeing where we can, with UDL, bring those kind of skill sets into the practice of the classroom. So that's, I think, bringing it full circle, actually. So this is very exciting news. And I mean, just a couple comments I had were that, I'm hearing more about extension. We always talked, my 9 years, about intervention and extension. And I know that intervention is, of course, the critical issue that needs to be addressed to make sure that students can meet standards. But knowing that this also gives you that flexibility for extension above and beyond where you could even do it in your traditional classrooms in the past. I think this is exactly what we've been talking about wanting to get to. And so this UDL seems to be giving the tools for you to do that, which is exciting. The question I had for you was, I know the one thing about the upper elementary school, which is unique to New Hampshire, because we grew so fast in southern New Hampshire, that you take basically elementary schools and you actually integrate them to a full grade of 300 plus students in 5th grade. So I know that the learning environment at the beginning of the year is probably very different very shocking for your students as it is. How has UDL helped with the integration of the 3 schools into one?
So as a 5th grade teacher, I think the whole, like Courtney talked about, the choice of their seating and UDL has a big focus on collaboration and community building. So I think that ties in nicely, where we have part of our matrix. I don't know if anyone has the matrix. We have our matrix here, and you'll see that like part of it is to foster comprehension and foster engagement is a big piece of it is collaboration. And so I think like as a teacher, I really look at this now and working with in my classroom. So just collaborating together, giving the students the choice of where they're working and who they're working with, getting to know one another. I think our social emotional learning curriculum also kind of ties into that and really helps with that transition and that bringing everyone together. So,
Thank you very much. Brandy.
A similar question, but when you have barriers in place and your learners are maybe struggling with test anxiety or things that are happening at home that they carry with them into the classroom, there are certain barriers that are with a child even before they step in. When you have UDL in place, have you noticed a shift in your social environment within the classroom? Because there is obviously the intention of our district is to educate, but the social piece is huge. So have you seen in implementing UDL a change in your classroom environment from a social perspective, which also can affect our education?
I take this. So for this year, so again, part of that rubric is also about self-regulation and like recognizing yourself as a learner and where you are and like if you're feeling anxious. And my team recently did a whole thing with zones of regulation. So we're looking at, it's kind of a color scale, like are the kids feeling, they might be feeling sad or upset or anxious. And we went through what that looks like. And then we looked at what tools do you have that can help you move to what we call the green and ready for learning zone. Because our optimal goal is to be in the green zone, ready to learn, or available for learning. But we know that kids come in with, anxiety or stress from home. We know that sometimes they can be super hyper and silly. So we call that the yellow zone. And they all have strategies. And we also talk about how my strategies might be different than Courtney's. And so the kids in my class have a chart, or my whole team, we have a chart. When I'm feeling this way, here are my strategies to help me get to the green zone. And we also have red, which means like you're very upset, very angry, and how are we going to get back down to green where we're ready to learn? So I think that looking at this matrix, that kind of tied in really nicely to that. And so we're working on getting those kids to recognize, where are you feeling and how are we going to get, you can have those feelings, but how are we going to get you and support you to that green zone where you're ready to learn? So.
Can I as well? I think one of the things this year in particular that I've recognized is that my students don't feel alone in their learning. Like Kathy said, a lot of it is focused on building a community, collaborating with each other. I actually sat down with a student the other day who has really struggled with just learning anxiety. And he's been really successful in my class this year. And we've taken it step by step. Here are your two choices. What do you feel most comfortable with? Do you want me to remove some of the language of this and just focus on the skill? Or do you want to give it a shot? And then we'll see where we can go from there. And we sat down the other day and he asked me a question. And I said, Bud, we've worked together, haven't we? And he said, we have. And I said, you've been really successful this year. And he said, I sure have. And I said, this is your choice, right? He said, I do now. And that to me, I almost cried, because this is a student who comes in with that extra baggage, who now understands his voice is just as important. And he has control over his environment just as much as I do.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Well, thank you very much for a thorough presentation. A lot of updates. I know this is year 2 for you, so we have a lot of year 1 schools in our district, so we know the evolution is coming. And we thank you so much for the time that you've taken and the work that you're doing. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
And as they're clearing out, I will announce item number 4, which is the premiere of What's Up Merrimack, a production of the Merrimack High School videography program. And I invite to the table videography teacher Michael Shaughnessy and department head Jan Moynihan Cooney. So, thank you and welcome.
Good evening. I'm Jan Moynihan Cooney. I'm the English department head at the high school.
And I'm Mike Shaughnessy. Am I doing this right? I'm videography teacher, film arts director at Merrimack High School.
At the high school, we continually strive to increase our level of communication with students, staff, and the Merrimack community. With our numerous clubs, organizations, and athletic teams, there's a tremendous amount for us to share. Along with that, students have continually expressed an interest to have a televised broadcast to coincide with our morning announcements. And so that was the impetus for What's Up Merrimack. And what that is a weekly broadcast showcasing what's happening at MHS. So Michael and I would like to share with you episode number 1.
We can probably get the lights dimmed by our access guy, I think. He's coming.
Here he comes.
Thanks.
What's up, Merrimack? We are super excited to announce we have a show right here at the Merrimack High School TV studio.
Thanks to a lot of help from Mrs. Monahan Cooney and Mr. Shaughnessy, we are finally underway.
Coming in 2020, What's Up Merrimack will be a weekly show focusing on the highlights from the week's events. Sports, academics, student and teacher achievements, and more will be a topic of conversation.
Right now, we're going to hear from Andrea real quick. She's with Mr. Susi, our new girls basketball coach.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Mr. Susi, the new girls basketball coach. Hi, Mr. Susi. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, why did you decide to become the girls basketball coach?
So, there's a couple of things that took place. First thing was our coach resigned. Our last year's coach resigned at the end of September, which gave us a really short time frame in order to find a new coach. So we posted the position for a few weeks and really didn't get any hits off of that. And to be fair to the girls and to be fair to everybody, I just decided that, since my background is as a basketball coach, I figured I would take the team for 1 year and see how it goes. At least there's some stability there for a year, and then hopefully we can find somebody for a permanent solution going forward, come the spring and early summer.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan. What are you most excited for about this season?
Well, for me personally, it's to get back on the sideline and to work with a group of kids on a day-to-day basis. You know, I coached for 26 years, and stepping away from that to becoming the athletic director, I don't have that same day-to-day contact with the students anymore. I miss that. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And then from a team standpoint, I'm just looking to see how much they grow and improve during the course of the season, because I'm a very process-oriented coach. And so I don't measure success by wins and losses. We measure it by how much we've improved from the beginning of the year to the next.
Awesome. So how do you think the girls are going to do this season?
Well, it's a good returning group of girls. I think we graduated one senior from last year's team, so the rest of the group should be coming back. And we had a really strong JV team, so that's going to provide us with a good base of kids to start with, and we'll see. You know, it's always a challenging thing coming into a new season with a new coach, because you've got different terminology, different system, things to learn, but I think they'll pick it up pretty quickly, and I think we'll do okay.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
And now here's to a special segment with Mrs. Croto. That was awesome. Now back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, Andrea.
Now, for this week's mystery person. Take it away, Zach.
Alright, so this is how it works. We talk with our mystery person. They will give us 3 clues. If you know who it is, drop your name and guess in this box outside the TV studio. Next episode, we will pick a winner from the correct guesses. The winner will receive a $5 Dunkin's gift card. Okay, so here we go. Mystery person, what is your first clue?
This is my favorite tool to use.
Alright, now, what is your second clue?
This is a passion and hobby that both my spouse and I share.
So now, what is your third clue?
This is a very refreshing drink that I enjoy.
Okay. So guess who this person is and leave it in the guessing box.
Thank you, Zach.
Okay, right now we take you to Alexa, who is with our incredible Quiz Bowl team. Alexa?
Thanks, guys. If you guys could introduce yourselves.
I'm Nick. I'm Aiden. I'm Troy. I'm Andrew. I'm Scott. And I'm Alex.
So for those who don't know, what is Quiz Bowl?
It's a trivia competition. We usually have teams of 4, and we compete against other schools around the state.
And do you guys have any goals for this year?
Yeah, we're gonna win our Grant State Challenge thing. It's gonna be great. We qualified with the second highest score, so we're looking to do some damage out there in the tournaments.
Nice. What is Granite State Challenge?
So Granite State Challenge, it's the televised version of Quiz Bowl, I guess, in New Hampshire specifically. So you've got a bracket of teams from all across New Hampshire, and you compete 4v4 with 2 alternates in a televised Jeopardy-style trivia competition.
Do you guys have a favorite category you like to compete in or answer questions from?
Absolutely. I like to do the math and the science, but Scott here is a guru with the literature.
What about you, Troy?
I also like to do science and math. History for me. Reading history.
Alex?
History as well, and pop culture.
Nice. Let's see how smart these guys really are. Okay, this title character of a Dickens novel was born in a workhouse.
Oliver Twist.
Let's see. In musical notation, how many horizontal lines are in a staff?
5.
Lastly, which U.S. capital bears the name of the Prussian who served as the Chancellor of Germany from 1871 to 1890?
Bismarck.
Yep.
Bismarck, yeah.
Back to you.
This is great, Alexa. Those guys are really smart.
Well, MHS, this wraps our first episode of What's Up Merrimack. Make sure you get your guesses in our mystery box. We will pick the winner in the new year.
Teachers and students, if you'd like to have content mentioned in our next episode, please email Mr. Shaughnessy and we will try to get it into the show ASAP. Also, if you have a special achievement or something that you would like to be considered for the show, please let us know. Have a great weekend, Merrimack.
This is only a test.
It's a big talk of the school, that last moment.
Yeah, that came out just in a test. We were trying to figure out how to use our green screen. So, do you want me to share? Yeah. Okay. So speaking of UDL, our first conversation about this was at our UDL at August Academy. So there's got to be some connection. I don't know. We met, like I said, for the first time to talk about this idea in August, and we are just delighted. We're thankful that we had a chance to gather all the students that are participating in this process, and it's something that I think we didn't want to rush into. That's why we took our time to get the team together, and the students have kind of bonded, and we have now our second episode underway, hopefully released on the 3rd of January, and then we'll have 2 episodes in January, 2 episodes in February, shooting to try to get 4 episodes once a week in March, and then April and May. So that's the goal. So are there any questions?
Excellent. Other questions from the board? So I've talked to you in parent-teacher conferences, and my son took 2-year semesters, but it's definitely, something where new ideas coming out of videography has been, exciting for our students, and new options and how they could apply those skills. So we thank you for coming up with new and innovative ideas to get different students, other than the ones that would just be typically taking the class, engaged, because I think it can resonate with a lot of different career goals that they have out of high school. I know, my son's going to be a film major, so that's his goal. So, but from coming through the classes at Merrimack, so I can testify myself from this table, but we'll see what he gets into. Yeah, absolutely, Mark.
So I really want to thank Michael and Jan. If you noticed at the end, the credits was all students, and I also just want to point out, and again with appreciation. Sometimes the board has asked, what's been the impact of different things that we try to initiate in Merrimack on the teachers. We talk about students a lot, but teachers make it happen. And the fact that folks were challenged by some ideas at August Academy around trying to think innovatively about our resources that we have. I mean, that the community has seen fit to, and the boards, have seen fit to provide, a beautiful studio and the services that relate, and then do something that's student-centered, student-driven, is kind of walking the walk, not just talking the talk, but really trying to demonstrate that there's a lot of capacity with our students, and that we have the tools to help them demonstrate that in creative ways. That is also not assessed, but those are the kinds of skills that being able to work with teacher leaders, to be able to editorialize, make decisions about content, and to then gain that comfort level. Those are all skills that I think are going to be more than just those students. I bet that this will grow and other students will be involved over time. But anyway, this is just an example of we're trying to make real some of the things we talk about doing from theory to practice.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Yes, Cinda.
Just a quick comment. Thanks for the for showing that. That was really a treat for me, anyways, to see what the students are doing and be able to see that in the video fashion. So I just wanted to thank you for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
And I do have a guess on your mystery person. I'm not going to put it out on camera.
Put it in
I'm
the
going to
box.
tell Dr. McLaughlin after the meeting, and he will tell me whether or not I was right, okay?
Feel free to put your thing in there. You got a couple more days.
I'm not taking $5 of dunks away from a student.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we're on to item number 5, which is the formal hearing on technology, library, media budget. And I bring to the table Director Nancy Rose. Welcome, and thank you so much for all your preparation.
Good evening. It's a tough act to follow. Those very entertaining. That was nice. So I will just give a brief overview of what this year's budget involves, and then I have questions from the board members that I'll read the questions and respond to those, and then any additional questions after, if that's okay. Okay. So this year, the budget really just kind of reflects an ongoing commitment to supporting the technology and library programs which support teaching and learning in Merrimack. There are some increases in the software line. I think this is just sort of a trend that we see. We're renewing some infrastructure services. We're retooling our wireless licensing, and I did some multi-year licensing, so we didn't have to pay that for a year or two. We're adding systems that focus on data security, tracking student privacy information, single sign-on, and things like that, based on being as compliant as possible with the new HB 1612 addition to the data privacy law. We're also working on improving our network security controls and content filtering. And then, as always, we try to add devices. We're also replenishing devices. We're trying to keep our life cycle lower on equipment than it was when I got here. So that's kind of an ongoing challenge because the number of devices we have grows. And so we're trying to shorten the year and increase the devices, which makes the math a little bit tricky. And it also reflects just the ongoing sustainment of the library program, which has been sort of the going concern that I inherited when I arrived, which was the strength of that central library program. And that is the selection of materials for reading for pleasure, supporting research in the classroom, such as nonfiction and things like that. And also, we are this year starting to see the need to have a lot more materials available in other languages for students who are reading for pleasure. So it's not just all focused on learning school and learning English. It's so that they can have some materials that they can access in their native languages. And I think the other thing is that we're trying to stay flexible with in the additional equipment area and the STEM areas to support universal design. So it's nice to follow on how much that's been talked about, because universal design can really be supported through the use of technology. So that's just a general overview. I wanted to also say that, just to start out, as we have been able to leverage that model with the CIP, our Capital Improvement Plan for Technology, over the last 5 years, to move us from essentially having no instructional equipment in classrooms, having no budget for replacement of hardware and software, and also really no strong plan for the replacement or upgrade of infrastructure such as cabling, switches, routers, and the equipment in the closets. So we were able to use that and do incremental change over the last 5 years to what I was talking about a month ago with what we've done over the last 10 years, and that's been phenomenal, and I'm grateful, and I hope the community knows how much we've been able to do with the support of the board and the budget committee and the community and the voters. But I also wanted to say that going forward, we might need to start to consider how we can leverage economies of scale and also best practices. So as we move forward, we tended to do a little bit of work in all 6 schools in the 3 administrative buildings so that we didn't have a 5-year gap where we had wireless in one building and waited 5 years to put it in the last school, or the 6 years in the last school. So to move forward, we might want to start looking at, do we cable an entire building, or do we replenish the wireless for an entire building? Or if we're looking to move forward with more student devices, how are we going to do that? And so I just wanted to put out that the way that we've been doing the budgeting it has gotten us to where we are, but it might be time for us going forward from this year, not this year, but going forward from this year to consider how we wanted to take that on. So I just wanted to put that out there. But again, I can't believe what we've been able to do for the last 10 years. So moving forward with questions, I wanted to start with Chairman Barnes' questions. And some of Andy's, Schneider's questions will filter in with these as well. So one of your questions was about the infrastructure account and asking about the price and quantities of items such as projectors and computers. So roughly to install a projector in a classroom is about $2,150, and that's the projector, the cabling, the install, the wall plate, all of that. The maintenance department usually is able to install the electricity ports for me, so that's very helpful. So this year, just as an example, we did 4 installs in classrooms at the middle school that had not previously been designated to have projectors because of the way they were using the rooms. And so like in Tech Ed and FACS, because we have those computer modules, students worked almost entirely at those different stations, but they've transitioned to more of a STEM model or a STEAM model where they have the need for the instruction to be projected. So we've put projectors in those rooms. And also one of the Spanish classrooms. And we also added a projector in the library at the middle school because they have several instructional spaces and they didn't have projection in both areas. We added one at the high school and also one at MES. And this is responsive to changes in how rooms are being used. If we have a projector die, it's about $400 to $600 depending on the type of projector, because some of ours are what we call a standard throw, where they sit back farther and they aim farther, and then we have some that are mounted right on the wall and they aim straight down. The lens is more expensive in those. The install is less, the lens is more. We also have, and this year we've had to replace about 7 projectors that have just died. So many of them are 9 and 10 years old, so we've been getting a lot of life out of them. And I also wanted to include sound field installs. This is work that I've done collaboratively with the special ed department, and the sound fields is the installed audio speakers that are integrated into the computer system and also to the lanyard that the teacher wears, and can also be used to capture lesson material and to make the classroom a lot more integrated together. The sound fields themselves are about $1,100 a piece. Is that right, John? And then the install is about $550. So it's just to give you a sense of what it takes to really fully outfit a classroom. We haven't got to those being installed in every single classroom. We're doing that in as we can, and we do that just based on what we can accommodate. And then another area that I think is worth mentioning is that when we first started putting classroom projectors in, they were mostly VGA, just an older video format, and now everything is moving towards HDMI, probably another protocol coming forward before I can get these done. So where we don't have HDMI, we're going back and installing the cables and wall plates for that, and that can cost between $300 and $600 a room, depending on how far the run is. And then there was a question from Andy about, let me just make sure I have your question. Just to talk more about the $260,000 line item for computers, and then also if that could be split across multiple years. And then going back into Chairman Barnes' question about the cost. So I wanted to say that the $260,000 is actually a reflection of the multi-year lease payments that we make. So that's the aggregate number of payments. And it covers payments starting from the year 17-18 through 19-20, plus an expected additional $60,000 to go forward with the next year, and I'll say more about that. And then there's about a $20,000 payout from the year 16-17. When I did that lease, I was anticipating that we would have shortened our life cycle so aggressively that we would be able to return those items, and those items are still in use in classrooms and they're not going away. So we're just going to spend the amount, the market value to buy them out, and to move forward. So it's what we didn't pay in the lease payments that we're just going to pay out now. And just to kind of give a sense of costs, for a Windows laptop, we spend about $470. We try very hard to get a device that has 8 gig of RAM and 256 on the hard drive. And that is because, especially with students, multiple users on a laptop, that loads multiple profiles, and we have to have the storage to accommodate that. A Chromebook is roughly $217, and so there's immediately, ooh, they're half as much money. They also don't do as much. So we've had use cases where the Chromebook is the exact right tool, and then there's times when they want the laptops. So as we go forward, I'm finding that schools are wanting a mix of both so that they can sort of decide what it is that they're going to do. We also buy carts for the devices, which cost about $800 a piece. And they have the charging to keep those safe and also condition the electricity. A desktop is roughly $525. And so this last year we put in 60 student devices for laptops and 15 staff replacements just to hold on to, because as staff need replacements, we want to have something on hand. And so those have been going out. This does not include the set of math laptops that were purchased through the high school math department budget. So those were separate but also purchased. We put in 84 Chromebooks that were distributed between Reed's Ferry, Thornton's Ferry, and Muse, and carts to go with those. And then the desktops that we bought replaced Thornton's Ferry and Reed's Ferry, which we had given them the hand-me-downs from the Muse labs. So they had 4-year-old machines that they used for 2 years, and then they just got new ones this year. Last year we were able to update the machines at Reed's Ferry. So we're always kind of looking at where we can add RAM and get more life out of a computer. And then we are also trying to do entire sets at once. So we tried to do as many in one big chunk so that supporting those devices, a technician going into a building knows what they're walking into for the most part. I also wanted to mention that last year we spent about $17,000 on RAM, and with that we were able to upgrade the oldest computers, and I kind of just did a rough calculation, but we upgraded about 500 devices that would not have been necessarily usable, but we were able to keep them in circulation. So I think that's a good value, and for most of what people are doing by upgrading the RAM, the device stays very viable. And then the other thing that we've been learning is that by replacing the filters on the data projectors, it extends the life, because believe it or not, there's an awful lot of dust in the schools. And so we've been investing money in putting in the filters so that the projectors last longer. And we've had pretty good luck with most of our projectors lasting more than 8 or 9 years. So this kind of maintenance and investment is helpful, and I'm lucky to have the staff that can do those kinds of installations. But we do have to pay to put those things in. So that's kind of the equipment, how things were used. Going forward, I also wanted to mention we're going to try to replace 130 laptops at the high school and add 30 if we can. At the middle school, we're looking to replace the 2 computer lab computers, because those are fairly old. And at the middle school, we wanted to add a cart of laptops. And at Muse, there are 60 laptops that date back to 2015 that they're still using. We were able to upgrade the RAM in those, so it kind of is going to become a question if they'll let go of them. But this is that constant struggle, because as we add devices, they want more devices to use in classrooms and use for instruction. And so if something is viable and doesn't require a lot of service, they're willing to use the older devices to keep them going and in circulation. So this is a balancing act that we're kind of always engaged in. So I just wanted to let you know that. And then one of Chairman Barnes's other questions was to provide more details around the STEAM equipment. And this is one line in the capital improvement that we added a few years ago to try to promote having more opportunities for different learning in science, technology, engineering, math, and the arts. And so I just wanted to share some of the things that we've been able to do. Is this year we got a 360 camera for doing the 360 videos. And the hope is to make those videos integrated into the Google Expedition set, so that when they take the set into the classroom, the VR set, students can then view those videos that way. We've been able to keep some 3D printers up and running. They are a bear to maintain just in general, and we have them in just about every school, and they need a lot of different parts and support and filaments and things like that. We were able to upgrade some of the Lego core robotic pieces, like the EV3 Mindstorms and the WeDo sets that they use at the elementary level. We have some that get used as part of just regular school, some that are part of the FLL club. And this last year and this year, FLL, they have their competition, but they've also kind of just kept meeting because the kids enjoy doing the work. And so they're getting continued use, and the batteries wear out and things like that. And then the other thing that was captured in this was the replacement of the tech ed machines in the STEAM room at the middle school. We needed to upgrade the computers because they're changing the program, and they were taking the modules out. And then going forward, there's some interest in virtual reality or augmented reality, adding more of that functionality. The Google Expedition set we got from the trustees several years ago is wildly popular. It gets reserved out of the high school, and we move it all over the district, and there's interest in moving forward with another one of those. And then another area that we've been talking about is more hands-on and robotics opportunities for the K to 2, grade kindergarten through grade 2 level. Things that don't involve reading can be a challenge to find. And so one of the things I liked this last year, the Reed's Ferry librarian, tech educator, one of the kindergarten teachers, put in a grant and received a grant for focusing on that age group, and they found these little bee robots that you push buttons on them to program. And so they learn about algorithms and how to think spatially and reason how to make the robot do things like make shapes and go in paths, or to follow directions and go places. And we're looking at replicating those in other schools. And then there's also just different block sets that are very mathematical and come with curriculum for how to take it from just plain abstract play building to something where you're actually constructing. And it's very focused on learning specific concepts, and so we're kind of looking to expand that to the other schools. And then I also wanted to mention we submitted grant applications. The New Hampshire Department of Ed put out a request for applications for robotics programs, and it's largely focused on FIRST. There's no way around that. It's really focused on competitive programs. So we just recently found out that we won $18,000 for this year and next year to support those programs. And that offsets, they're expensive, and so it helps offset the cost of registration, tournament filings, getting the base core robot, the parts that they need, replacing field components. At the high school, they're hoping to purchase a CNC cutter, so computer-controlled cutter. And then it also just helps make sure that we have enough equipment, because I'm not going to remember off the top of my head, FLL Junior, which serves K through 4, as you may recall, a few years ago we had only the Thorntons Ferry program, which served about 100 kids, which is fabulous. And now we have, this year I think we have, I'm guessing it's like 9 teams at Thorntons, 7 at Reed's, and 8 or 9 at MES. So the participation's growing, and I think we just set the date for the expo to be March 5th at Thorntons Ferry, possibly. So there's going to be more to come, but that's a growing program. The FLL program at the upper elementary is about 6 teams pretty consistently, which serves 40 to 50 kids. So it's a very good program, and it's difficult to run, and we're always looking for coaches. So that is more of what we've been able to do with STEM. And Naomi asked, what aspects of this have been, let's see. You're asking about the software line, and if there was something that had been underfunded because the software line has gone up. And rather than underfunding, one of the things that happened is that back in 2017-18, there were a bunch of renewals for wireless licensing, for our storage system, and for the services that run on the firewall, like the malware, anti-spam, and those kinds of things. And you get more for your buck if you do multi-years. So I did a bunch of them that year that landed in this coming budget year. So that's a challenge. But as we're looking at it, we're also looking at what we need to do with our hardware to upgrade our firewalls to make them more current with what our needs are. So there's going to be some give and take, but that is reflective of what that line is, partially what's causing that to be up. We also continually get requests for more tools that support learning across the curricular areas. One of the areas that I've been getting asked about is music. The high school uses smart music with students, and it's a way to make the music classes more enriched. And so there's interest in looking at that for the middle school and the upper elementary as well, where the band programs are so profound, and it allows them to use technology to learn more about what they're doing. We have added more functionality behind the scenes, such as data integration for tools that help us move data from PowerSchool through the different systems in a way that's very secure, and where we can put transitions so that we're moving it into the right fields and can automate processes. Also, things like ClassLink, which allows for single sign-on. The Student Data Privacy Consortium, which is the membership that helps us get access to the data privacy agreements, which shows that the products we're using are protecting student data. That's the big consortium that we belong to. As well as KnowBe4, which is a product for teaching about cybersecurity, phishing alerts, training on how to be mindful of being good stewards of data in the district. I don't know if everybody knows, but the biggest risk in any environment to the network and to the security is the humans. And so we have to work on training the humans. And then the other area that I've been working with lately is Family ID, which is a tool it's used in athletics a lot, but it's for managing registrations and paperwork that goes with registrations, and we're looking at setting it up. I think that we're just about ready to roll for the adult ed for this coming semester to do online registration and payment. But we think this is something that will support, plays, field trips. I know for FLL and FLL Junior, we get really stuck because we don't really have a good way to track kids when they go up through the grades and the volunteers that go with them, to keep track of registration, who's willing to coach, what's all their information, have they signed, all of these different things, so to help with that. So those are the kinds of things that continue to drive the software line. There's just more and more use of tools, and the software line covers infrastructure, back-end, library research, instructional tools, and then utilities that help us do a lot of data management. So it's a big bucket. And then your other question was, are there particular items that are driving the cost, which we went through? Any smaller items combined? Are there any other library media costs that might decrease or would offset some of these needs? There's so many different small tools that do the thing that they do that it's kind of hard to figure out how to combine them. But as we find ways to replicate and do more with a different piece of software, we will let something go. So we do look for that. It just doesn't happen a lot. And then as far as the library program budget has been stable for quite a few years, and really the only two areas in that budget that are, maybe have room for anything would be the book line and the additional equipment line. Everything else is pretty much subsistence. It's very bare bones. It hasn't changed a lot. Like book binding is only about $1,500, but it extends the lives of books. Supplies is a big account, but we use it because it's in support of all the technology that we're using. It's all the adapters and dongles and batteries and chargers and book covering supplies and everything like that. And as we bring in more technology, we have to be ready to provide the supplies that will keep those things going and connected. But I wanted to just share, I did a little bit of quick math with the book budget and the additional equipment budget, and I have always sort of looked at the district by the high school representing roughly a third, the upper and middle schools representing roughly a third of the students, and the elementaries, the pre-K through 4 schools representing roughly a third. But when I did the math this time based on projected enrollments, it's more 30, 30, 40. So the elementary schools represent about 40%. And so I just kind of calculated it out a little bit differently. And for books, the way the book budget breaks out, we have about $10 to spend on a student for replacement of library books, addition of high interest series, the acquisition of stuff to support research. And so really, I think when I first got here, it was more in the $15 to $20 range per student. So the number has stayed the same. That $40,000 has not gone up. There were a few years that we cut it, but it supports every student in the district because it's the centralized collection. And then for additional equipment, this is the instructional technology beyond the projector. So this is things like iPads, the interactive teach bars, document cameras, clicker response systems, and things like that. That we spend about $5 per student there. So these are areas where we have room that if we needed to make room, we possibly could, but it isn't that they serve the entire buildings that they support. And so I just wanted to make that point because my budget does serve the entire district. So that was that. And then the other question from Naomi was, understanding that a high quality tech infrastructure is a moving target, do you predict that this budget line will continue to increase yearly at levels that it has been, or it will at some point level out? And this is the technology infrastructure account, which in the past has been kind of the CIP, the capital improvement plan. And so the challenge here is that the demand on and for more technology continues to grow. And we're getting to a point where many of our core systems are hosted. So we don't own them on premises. So 365 is something that runs off district. Our email system is now a hybrid of on-prem and run in the cloud. Our learning management system is cloud-based, while the student information system is hosted, but the data backups for it are removed from the district daily. Many of the software applications that are used are library system is another one that's hosted. So when the internet goes down, there's a lot of things that go down. And so our reliance on the internet has gone from it's really nice to have it to when we don't have it, we're kind of dead in the water. So as we're moving forward, we're looking at redundant connectivity, in working towards redundant equipment in the routers and the firewall so that if something goes wrong with our equipment, we can still keep our connectivity going. We've already built some of this into the way the phone system is designed. We still have room to grow in that area. But the challenge here is that we're demanding more and more from our technology, and it's becoming more and more critical. And so it may plateau as we go through like a major refresh, but at some point we'll have to be looking at that again. We've been fortunate with bandwidth and what we've been able to do with building out our infrastructure to build out the fiber, that once that's done, we may save some money there, but we probably are going to have to add to it. So it's kind of like every time we are a little bit caught up, it seems like the demand's going to keep going. And the other thing I wanted to also point out is we're responding to the demands of the new laws for data privacy and security, but also the new reality, which is that schools are targets for hackers. So we have to have bulletproof systems for email, for our firewalls, for protection of our environment, and also protection of data. Student data is highly lucrative because students don't use their data until maybe 10, 15 years after it has potentially been compromised. And so it's a really good target for hackers to get their hands on. And there's also a perception that school districts are not capable of really fully protecting. And so they kind of come after schools. I don't know why you would attack a school, but people do. And so that's just kind of a thing that we're just preparing ourselves to deal with going forward. Just we know we have to. And then Cinda asked a question, please explain the paging system upgrades. This is one of the lines in the tech infrastructure budget, a $5,000 line. How does the system work now and what will upgrades do? Are there alternative solutions? We currently are using the paging systems that have been in place at every school except for the high school since I've been here. The high school, we had an emergency replacement about 3 or 4 years ago.
It seems like it was longer, but you're probably right, 3 years.
It's been 3 or 4 years.
It was around, like you said, around $10,000.
Yeah, it was about a $10,000 replacement cost. The phone system and the paging system in the high school are prehistoric, and so they were. And so when we upgraded the phone system, there were some connectivity issues that just caused that paging system to not function anymore. It was actually literally a voltage incompatibility. And so it caused that system to fry rather unexpectedly, and so we were just put in the position of, and it's a more modern system, has more capability. For the other schools, the paging kind of is it's wires and speakers and access to those, and so it doesn't really change a whole lot. It's analog, but we still keep those things going with updating controller boards and amplifiers. And that's what this reflects, is just making sure that we're prepared. The next system that we expect we might have to do replacements in is the MES Muse Complex, which shares a system. Are there things that we should consider? There are a lot of new technologies in this area, but this is getting into unified communication. And when we're looking at trying to keep our budgets as level as possible, those are areas that would be wonderful to research and look into. They have a lot of really good capabilities, a lot of different kinds of controls, but they have big tickets with them. So they're Cadillacs, they're nice systems with newer technologies, but as yet we haven't gone there. So those were the questions that I had, and I hope it wasn't too boring.
Not at all. So I see Andy and I see Cinda. So
I want to touch a little bit more on the moving things off-prem, going from on-prem things that we do to the cloud, because this is what I live every day and what I do for my day job.
Mm-hmm.
Do we find that for the things that we use in the district, that the overall cost is neutral, more or less?
I think for most of the services, moving to the cloud or hosted is more expensive, out of pocket. But you're not paying to maintain servers, and you're not paying staff to maintain servers. So that's the difference there. But when we've looked, I know PowerSchool we host, but I know that that will be an increase. We just were looking at the nursing software, which we host, and they are really trying hard to move to hosted environments, and that would increase in cost. 365, we pay our Microsoft license, and it's about the same as it's always been. And so that didn't cost us more because we pay for this kind of the base rate of the cloud version of things. I'm hoping that that stays steady for a while, but you know, these companies, they lure you in and then they say, oh, and by the way now. Yeah. Right. So in general, I think for software as a service, it goes up. But then there's things that we don't have to supply or pay for on premises.
Well, that's,
but
I mean, that's quite the typical challenge that vendors, customers have is the overall cost the same? I know you have less on-prem hardware, need for maintenance and things on-prem, but usually the cloud costs are more. And then you've got to be able to increase your bandwidth and things like that with the internet. So that's why as we go through time, understanding whether it's costing us more and are we reaping any benefit from the increased cost.
Yeah.
And that may be something you don't really realize until we get to next year or the year after.
Well, and the other challenge is some of the companies are just starting to push it. And so they're not wanting you to host your own environments anymore because it's harder for them to support. It takes away some of the control that you have over systems. Interoperability between systems kind of becomes more dependent on the company. So there are reasons to not go that way. Sometimes there's reasons to go that way. We have a hybrid exchange environment for email, partially because we maintain the old merrimack.k12.nh.us domain, and to maintain that, we have to have multiple server environments, where for 365, that's where we run SAU26.org. There's really no way around that at this point. Microsoft hasn't solved it because they like selling Exchange servers. So, this is sort of just the nature of the beast. But we're constantly looking at it. The next big thing is storage, and whether you continue to do on-prem storage or storage in the cloud, both, the combination of the two, and that's sort of the next area that we're looking at. So.
Cinda? Yep, you're set? Okay.
Yeah, so we have some members of the public here tonight, so I just wanted to thank those of you that came out tonight for coming out, because certainly everybody's busy, and for taking the time. I really appreciate you all being here. And along the same vein, I wondered if you could just take a step back and explain about, particularly as it relates to technology, about your department and what you're servicing, the number of buildings, the number of students. If you have just the estimates that you could just explain and kind of give a high level of what your team does for the district, for those that are here in this room, members of the public, and those that are watching at home.
Okay. So we have myself, and I'm the Director for Technology and Library Media Services. So I oversee the technology infrastructure and classroom technology, and also library and technology instruction, like the skills and what gets taught in the classroom, and also the library system, and oversee collection development and all of that. And then I have one network administrator, and then we have 3 technicians, one who supports the K-4 schools, one who supports the upper and middle schools, and then one who supports the high school and the 3 administrative buildings. Roughly a third of the different user bases. We currently, I don't know the actual honest count of devices. It's in the 3,500 range when you consider desktops, laptops, printers, iPads, in the different kinds of devices. And our server environment, we're at about, it's kind of mixed because we've moved towards more virtual machines. So we have actually like 20 servers, but we're probably managing 10 to 20 services. And so the network administrator is responsible for making sure that the updates are up to date on all of those things, that we've got backups for all of that, that we've got redundancy as much as possible. He also oversees our phone system because we manage and host our own phone system in-house. It's a voice over IP system that serves the entire district. And we also have frontline support in the technology educators, and we have 2 coordinators who work with them from grades 5 up through 12 in order to support teachers in what they need to know as far as what they need to know to move forward with innovative use of technology, as well as what to use in their day-to-day business, like when we get like Learning 365 and the new professional development system, and if we change a system, how to use that system. They also are the people who help us set up accounts for students and staff and to make sure that those accounts are all functioning. And then, while not directly in my department, we also have a data manager in the SAU that reports to Matt, who does all of the reporting, and she oversees Infinite Visions, the financial system, and the student information system, Power School. So all of that is a lot of partnership and a lot of collaborative work. Is that what you were thinking, or did I miss anything?
No, yeah.
I'm just sitting here like, did I catch it all?
I mean, you've been in front of me a lot over the years, but people that might be tuning in for the first time may not have some of that background, so I appreciate it. And I think one thing that I've heard at this table many times when you've come before us is for many of us that do work in the corporate world or work in IT areas, such as myself, I know Andy, Shannon, what you do with the resources that you have, I just don't see. You do a lot. It's a lot of work, a lot of buildings to support students, teachers, the learning every single day. And so much of it is dependent on technology. I also commend you for watching you through this budget process for, I think this will be my 9th year between the budget committee. Yeah, I'm serious. I'm aging right in front of you.
Likewise.
And, what you've done has been very methodical, very strategic in how you have brought the technology budget to us and to the community. So I really think you deserve to be commended for that. You've done a great job.
Thank you very much. That's the support of the board and the administration that drives it, so.
Thank you. Matt?
If I may just kind of interject a little bit. This is kind of give you a historical perspective before Nancy, and now you've heard what's happened after Nancy. And it's a good thing Nancy is here.
B-N and A-N.
Yeah, because now the whole thing is way above my capabilities, and I'm grateful that she's here to support. But we first started out with 3 bonded T1s going into the high school, and point-to-point T1s to all the satellite schools, with the exception of Mastercola Elementary and Mastercola Upper Elementary School, because 25 years ago, Adelphia Cable ran a fiber run from the high school to the complex that when we went to create the network back then, because we had a warrant article that raised $416,000 to create a network back in 2001. And the biggest challenge was to find where the fiber cable terminated in each building. We couldn't find it. So we went through that routine. But now with, 21st century learning and the demand on kids and education and how technology has really driven everything, to go from where we were to where we are right now, which is now you're finishing up the middle school.
The fiber build.
Fiber
the middle school will have dark fiber potential.
Yeah. The rest of the school is all one school district, is all a big fiber network, so it's instant communication. The middle school, I took a drive up there after you and I had a talk, and I can see the fiber on the pole, and it's getting closer and closer and closer, which is kind of encouraging, because that's something I tried to get done years ago, and then you came on board and you figured out a way how to do it that was cost effective and was legal. I was just going to string some fiber up there and hire a company, which was a suggestion from a cable company that was in town. But anyway, I mean, we've just grown leaps and bounds, but it's been out of necessity. It's the kids, the teachers, the faculty, the administration, the administrative assistants pushing us forward in order to get to where we need to be, and we've finally gotten there, but it's not going to end. You know, this technology piece and how we have to keep on top of it so we don't fall behind. We had a 10-year replacement cycle on computers.
It's bigger.
Bigger than that? Okay, when
It was
you
like 12
first
to
got
14.
here.
When I first got here, we had machines. I got here in 2009, and we had machines
Yeah.
that were 14 years old.
They were 14 years old, and now...
And no budget.
And no budget whatsoever. And now it's budgeted, it's out in the open, we're getting to a great replacement cycle where kids aren't using a 14-year-old computer. Can you imagine? So, you know, Nancy and her work has been stupendous, and the board supporting it. And it's a significant budget item every year, but it's a budget item that is exceedingly important to the success of this district and the success of every student in this district. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
So, and I have to say, I worked for Adelphia back then, so if they were
Yeah.
giving you the advice, remember the founder went to prison. So.
Oh, so that's why you said legal.
Sure,
That's
I
why
had
I
a couple
said
too.
it, yeah.
So
Just
go
do
ahead.
it.
Yep. So there's more questions, and I have a couple myself.
You know, I just out of curiosity, what do we get in the way of donations as it relates to technology? Is there anything that is given to us from, let's say, local corporations that we're able to use?
We at different times we've leveraged. I think Connection gave us equipment back in the day, and then BAE has a reconditioning program that we've used a few times. The challenge is that by the time companies used to replace things every couple of years, and so it was really good to get those machines. That's kind of gone by the wayside. Companies now are keeping machines longer so that by the time they come to us, they're in the 6-year-old, 5 or 6-year-old range. And by that time, then the hands-on requirements for that is kind of negated by the actual cost of the devices has come down so much. So we haven't been taking in as much that way. We've been getting more grants in support of areas more outside of just regular mainstream technology, like the Title IV money for STEAM and robotics. The trusts have helped us with that, and also this more recent grant. So,
okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of questions because you mentioned foreign language reading materials early on. And I know that ESL was something that they created more stringent regulations for us, and we've had to make adjustments. Have any of those materials helped with those initiatives that we've had to kind of streamline? Because I think we were always kind of acing it, and then it came to a point where with the increased regulations, whether, we had to make, if this was part of the adjustment, doing more of that in the K-12 environment. So it might be more of a Mark question than you question, but obviously it comes out of your budget.
Well, actually, what it really refers to is books in other languages, mostly Portuguese and Spanish, and they're more expensive. So the cost of getting a Spanish language book, or Portuguese especially, is much higher. And it's really, we put them in the library collection. So they're available for anybody, but this allows the ELL students to have an opportunity. I think, and I just know that my experience with the Title II money is that it's been more towards like equipment and instruction and teacher-based, where this is what we're putting into the collection as a resource to the students.
Okay, and then my second question was, and you're kind of led me already into the answer, but what about the languages that we're offering in the district? And are there foreign languages that are, materials that are being offered to help students who want to, again, do extension in foreign language, starting at the 5 to 12?
Every now and again we get a request for that, and we'll do that, but we haven't yet. So I think that those courses, it's still more based on what they're doing in the course or what they find online. But if they requested materials to support that, we would definitely do it.
Okay. Mark?
It's also important to, when you're talking about the world language, that they are in the midst of a curriculum rewrite. It's the first curriculum development that's included 5 through 12. Previously, they've been 7 through 12, or sometimes even 9 through 12, and then we've just tacked on the middle school. This is the first time that we have a 5 through 12 curriculum development program, and they are absolutely now, for the first time, looking at the availability that wasn't in existence when the last curriculum was done around technology, software, and all the things that are available now that weren't then. And so I would predict that maybe a year from now or so. I don't want to. We're pretty good about keeping. Not putting pressure on the curriculum committees to rush for any particular goal. I mean, they do what they do in the time it takes. But I would predict in about a year or so, maybe a little bit more, they will be coming before the board to be talking about those kinds of things. So I think we'll probably have more to say in about a year. Yep.
I also wanted to add, most of the licensed content that we get, like the library resource and research databases and things like that, they tend to be multilingual, so they can translate that. They can change it. It's translatable. So some of that material already exists, just in the native format that it gets licensed in. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Are there any other questions for Technology, Library, Media? Did you do it in the right order this time?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Technology, Library, Media.
Yep, that's right.
All right. Excellent.
So
with that, we thank you, and we are on to our next formal hearing.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks. Have a great night. So the next formal hearing is item number 6, which is on the food service budget for 2021, and I invite to the table Director Dave Zeke. Thank you and welcome, and thank you for your hard work on this.
Yeah.
Matthew.
Yeah, do you mind? Before Dave gets going, I just want to remind everybody that even though the food service budget is raised and appropriated, and it's in the gross appropriation of the budget warrant article, it is a special revenue fund, so it gets its money from its food service sales and some state reimbursement and some federal reimbursement for free and reduced meals. So it is self-sufficient, and it is no impact on the tax rate. So just because I haven't said it in a while and I felt like it, so
Yes,
I figured
very
I'd
good.
say it.
Thanks. It was a good intro, and,
All right.
and Dave, thanks.
Appreciate the opportunity to present tonight the food service budget for the Merrimack School District. We operate the food service program for the 6 schools in the district. And one of the major items I have tonight is for the upgrade of the point-of-sale service for student meals. This is kind of like phase 2 from last year's budget, which was the upgrade of the hardware in all the schools. So the hardware was necessary to go to this phase 2, which is the software upgrade, which was necessary for the hardware to be upgraded in the first place. But as far as the lunchbox software, it's operated with Silverlight, which is going to be no good in about a year. So Heartland Food Solutions is our supplier for software and the hardware for the school district. And the recommendation was to go to the Mosaic, which is it's a cloud-based, so it'll be a little bit more enhanced reporting and communication within the school district. The Mosaic communicates directly with My School Bucks, which is the parent online deposit system, and it also will the need for the servers in the cafeteria offices will be eliminated, so that everything will be going through the cloud. So we won't have to, service the servers, the computer servers in the high school, middle school, upper elementary, and our district server for food service. The amount of money that we put into this budget for the upgrade also includes the software, professional training, and the setup for that. The good thing about Heartland, they're very they're good with us as far as the budgeting process, and so they've allowed me to put the budget in for next year, but also allowing me to try to make the transition in April, which will be a little bit easier than starting up the school year with a new software system. They will let me defer that payment until July 1st, so that's a nice part of that. There were a few questions that Shannon and Cinda had given me, and first I'd like to address the first one that Shannon has, and kind of like the last one that Cinda had. Was the presentation from the Girl Scouts that addressed the environmental impact and health concerns from the styrofoam trays that we're using. The board was very supportive of the shift and to the better product. Now, I had the opportunity to see the presentation that the Girl Scouts had with Marcia McGill. It was the first time that they did it, and I'm very impressed. They did an excellent job. They had a lot of facts and figures, and the product in hand and everything. So, excellent opportunity for those two girls to come up and present that to me. With that said, some of the things that we have as far as obstacles for the trays is there was a neighboring district that was looking to switch over last year, and some of the problems they had was the Green Wave tray, which was the one that they had chosen, had some chemical additive to it called PFAS. So what happened was that district said, no, we can't do that. Very good choice, but unfortunately that was like a stopper for them, so they had to search for another alternative. The other alternative was similar to the ones that the girls presented with the corn maze, and in discussion with the Central Paper representative that I deal with, that tray was almost impossible to get. There was a company that was going to manufacture it. They gave them all the information for it, but it's readily not available. So at that point, we're kind of like waiting for the industry to catch up to the demand for this in the district. And so the budget I have for next year includes styrofoam as well, still. As far as the cost concerns, the difference between the styrofoam and the corn maze one is like $15.75 a case for the styrofoam, as opposed to $80 for the corn maze. So I think that will come down eventually, if they can produce them and keep up with the quantity. So kind of like on hold with that whole situation with the styrofoam trays.
Yeah, Dave, if you'd just like me to interject a little
Sure.
bit. First of all, we'd like to thank the Girl Scouts for coming before us, coming before the board with this idea. It's always good to get new ideas and new input. This is right now a burgeoning kind of industry. We sense that there could be and possibly be a lot of demand for this right now, but the price is rather prohibitive. and it couldn't be, you remember when I opened up and said the food service department is totally funded by lunch prices, lunch sales, and some revenue from state and federal. At the price differential between styrofoam and the new trays, I don't think the food service department could support that increase and still break even at best. So this would be something that we're watching the neighboring district and seeing how they do and what options they go with. We're in contact with the same vendor that they're using for their paper trays. So any information they get, we get.
Right.
And we'd like them to go through the growing pains right now to figure out best solution and to perhaps urge on the industry to catch up to what is seen as something that is environmentally friendly and in the long run is best for the community and the environment. But right now it is a tad cost prohibitive, but we're still gonna march along and keeping that in mind. And we just want to thank the Girl Scouts for bringing that to our attention.
So I had to follow up on that before we go too far.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that somebody got back in touch with them. I don't know if they came through, was it one of the principals or?
Marcia.
Through Marcia? Yeah, I would like, her to get back to them. They, again, took time out of their lives to come and talk to us. And if I recall, I think we did make a commitment that we would keep them posted on how it progressed. So I would like to make sure that we follow up and complete that. So
Absolutely.
Mark, can you take point on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
Yep. And so just to be clear, when they presented, they said that there were neighboring districts that were using a biodegradable base, but you're saying it has PFAS on it?
Exactly. Well,
Which is what we're trying to get rid of in our water?
correct. Well, it's similar to, and it's a moisture inhibitor. It kind of like sheds the moisture from it. And that was the Green Wave tray, which I don't think the Girl Scouts were looking at, but it was a tray that's used readily. But from what I understand from the Central Paper representative, someone from the state had alerted the neighboring district that this was included in that composition, and at that point they said, no, we're not interested in doing it. So that's when they went and looked for another option, and exactly where we are now, the other tray is not readily available at this point.
So they're also back to styrofoam. from
I
the sounds
believe
of it.
so. They have another option too, I think, which was another type of tray, but it's not styrofoam. It's more of a plastic recyclable tray. And I don't have the information on that one, but still, it's more expensive.
And really, in this co-op, because again, I know that we
Yes.
are very entrenched in the co-op. There's the majority of the co-op, or the total of co-op right now is using this styrofoam
Same.
tray.
Well, exactly. And the co-op is working with, the Central Paper is our distributor for the co-op. And we're working with them as far as looking for an alternative as well, so.
Okay.
Yeah, by co-op, this is the state of New Hampshire cooperative.
This is the New Hampshire buying
Yeah.
group.
The
Yes.
New Hampshire buying group that
Correct.
we partner with in order to get best price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I guess I'm just going to take one more on this one,
Sure.
on this very subject, and that is, if we do find a better, healthier, more eco-friendly alternative that we can sustainably fund,
Sure.
are we locked into a year's supply of styrofoam
No.
at the beginning of the year?
No.
Okay, so we can evolve and continue the conversation.
Correct.
So that's
Yep.
wonderful.
Mhm.
Okay, you've answered my questions on that. Thanks.
Excellent. And second question from Shannon was purchasing of school lunches, is it on the increase or decline? And basically, it's on the increase. We've seen an increase from last year at this time over the 59 days that I've looked at through November 30th, I think. So I think the elementary is a little bit higher as far as increasing, which is great, and it's included kindergarten as well, So I'm thinking that maybe they're a little more comfortable this year, going up to the lunch line and getting served. So that's a good sign. I think, I'm not sure if there's more students coming into the district as well at that level, so. And as far as surveying families and trying to find a feedback on types of food, we do surveys in the springtime. We produce them on the menus, and we ask for feedback from the students, and the students bring them home to their parents generally, and they kind of work on them together and send them back into us. But I'm also hoping to work with Mark McLaughlin maybe in getting something on the district website as well. And we always look for feedback and new ideas to put into the lunch program. So,
And to that end, yeah, if it's in the backpack, it's in the abyss. So the question is, can we do something electronic?
Yeah, we could
can
work
really-
with Mark Merrifield, unless Mark McLaughlin
Mark
knows how to-
McLaughlin, I'm sorry.
I was
how to
gonna
do
say,
it.
if we want to have any success with this at all, Dave, we're going to have to talk to someone else.
There's too many Mark M's.
So, wow.
The PhD in English will write the question, so he'll spell
He knows
check the
how to
question.
create a survey
There you
online.
go.
Whoa, go Mark. So yeah, we would work with Mark Merrifield to we can do an electronic survey, post a link, email it out to parents. We just, you think that's funny, huh? We just can we just need to create it and get it out there. So yeah, there's another way. So that'd be a good way actually to promote that. And we could also do some electronic awareness of free and reduced applications for any of those families. I know you go through and you do that, and you make sure the applications get home, but again, that's another piece of paper. So maybe we want to, do some, throughout the year.
Mark Merrifield has put the application online, so it's available online as well.
Yeah.
Under the food service.
But we can push a notification to all the parents just as easy as pushing a 5 o'clock in the morning phone call to them,
Oh, yeah.
But we won't do it at 5 a.m.
Would you like your teriyaki nuggets at 5 a.m. would not go well.
Yes, no.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Cinda had a couple other questions. Please tell us more about the software upgrade for the point of sale and student meal data and the bullet points that I've listed on the budget. Kind of briefly gone over them quickly, but as far as the point of sale, it's probably one of the most important things that we have going for the lunch program, and it's come a long way since I've started. I think way back in the day we had pencil paper and adding machine tapes. So, and I had to do my menu on a typewriter.
Yeah.
If you know what that is.
I know what a
So,
typewriter is. I remember that. It was one of the first times when I was here years ago. In fact, it was you had a surplus. We could cover it. It was around $125,000.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. We had to buy all the equipment. You had a server at each location, right?
Correct.
And it was paid for from the surplus, and it was a written recommendation from our audit company.
Correct.
Which we get audited every single year, but that was their recommendation that we automate the food service program. And that was way back in the day, and we've been keeping up with the enhancements to it, and this is another one that we just have to do, because it's so critical when you're dealing with that. The online payment system has helped out incredibly, but you still have a large amounts of cash. And whenever you have cash, that's a weak point right there, so it's very important
So
to
as
do
far
that.
as the online payment system, to date, from August until today, we've taken in $290,000 from parent prepayments, which is incredible because we used to process a lot of checks, and that just creates a lot of chance for error. Online prepayment, over the internet, goes right into the kid's account. The good thing about changing over to Mosaic, it's going to be real time. So if a parent does a deposit from My School Box into our Mosaic software, it'll go straight into their student account. Right now, it goes in, but it doesn't update until it updates at 6 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So if somebody would do an online payment at noon, it wouldn't go until 5 o'clock. The kids wouldn't see it till the next day. So with this Mosaic, it's going to be real time. It'll go right into their account. The other good part about the Mosaic is it's linked with PowerSchool. So if we have a new student being enrolled, goes into the system at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be in our system at 7:01. As opposed to now, if they go in anytime during the day, it updates the next day. So a student could actually be in the school district first day of school, and I don't see him on my computer. So that would be a very good point, that because sometimes we get, all of a sudden we get a check with a new student that's not in my system until tomorrow, so it becomes a challenge. As far as the updating the reporting and stuff like that, I have generalizations as to what is enhanced, but we do a lot of stuff with the state. We do a lot of stuff with free and reduced. All those reports will be better than we're getting now, and I can't expand on that, but it's just going to be a better opportunity for everybody, students, my employees, parents in the district. So as far as the next question that you have, do you feel you have the right equipment or layout to support kids in the district that have food allergies? One of the things we do have now already with the system that we run is there's the opportunity of inputting a flag for a student that has an allergy. So if a cashier's working and we've put in a peanut allergy or something, if they put that student in, it'll come up and say there's an allergy with that student. So we can be careful what we have available for the menu that day. So within the district, we do a lot of things with allergies for dairy intolerances, a lot of gluten-free. And so the things that we do with gluten-free, we do utilize Udi's bread products and stuff like that, which are all individually wrapped. We do have separate sections in the kitchen that if we have to prepare meals for the gluten-free students, we try to take care in handling. And so I think right now we're good with what we have. If we get more involvement with more different types of allergies, then I'd have to take a look at that and see, where we're standing and maybe change some systems that we have. But at this point, I think we're pretty good. Then the third question is, please explain the nutritional requirements that we have to adhere to. So with the National School Lunch Program, we're under pretty strict requirements as far as what we have to follow each day. Not only if in reimbursable meals, we have 5 components that we have to supply or give the kids the option to take, being the grain, the protein, fruits, vegetables, and milk. We actually have restrictions on what kind of vegetables that we have to offer every week too. So each week when I develop this menu, I have to look at the vegetable colors, and we have to have a dark green and an orange and a bean option. We have to have the starchy vegetable and an other vegetable too. So it's kind of hard to try to plan a menu every week and offer those on my menu. So this is a requirement from the USDA that we deal with, and so sometimes it's not, the kids would love to have French fries every day or something like that. We can't do that every day. So we do offer broccoli, we do offer Caesar salads, carrots, squash and things like that. So.
And that all controls the cost that we have to, that's regulated as well, right?
Yes.
The price of the lunch that we have to charge.
The prices, the paid lunch equity, we have, we're required to put all our information in and make sure that we're charging the price that's equal to or greater than what we get for reimbursement rates for the free meals. So that's one of the regulations in the system. One of the great things that's happened in the last year and a half, 2 years, is with commodity foods that we do receive, we've been able to defer up to 50% of what we receive in commodity foods in fresh fruit and vegetables. So this is it's been a great asset to our district, because we can offer more fresh fruits and vegetables to the kids each week. Before, I would get a monthly delivery for USDA products, and I would get a 1 month shot at fruit and vegetables. So I'd get like 8 cases of apples and 8 cases of carrot sticks, and that would be it. Now I can get a variety of lettuces and carrots, celery, pears, apples, and try to incorporate that into our menus every week. So that's a great help for us.
And that's through the federal government?
That's
program?
with the surplus commodity foods,
Okay.
yes. Yep. And right now I have $44,000 for the year budgeted for fresh fruits and vegetables. And then the last question was about the Girl Scouts, and I can't say enough how much I enjoyed their presentation. I think that's all I had for the questions, so I'm open for more.
Were there any other questions for Dave in the food service program? Seeing them, we thank you very much for your preparation and your hard work. And we
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We're on to item number 7, which is the formal hearing on the maintenance budget for 2020-2021 with Director Tom Tussaud. And Tom, welcome, and again, thank you for all your hard work and prep. We appreciate it.
Once again, it's budget time, and thank you very much for having me present the budget tonight. I'd like to start off by talking about a number of items that I'd like to highlight in my budget. One, a replacement of the portion of windows at Merrimack High School. There's a few questions also in the members' questions that we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail later. Replacement of 41-year-old chorus risers at the Merrimack High School. A mediation of drainage issues at Merrimack Middle School upper field, replacement of 19 new boiler pressure relief valves, and that came about because every 2 years the insurance company comes around and inspects our boilers, and he was nice enough to point out to me after 10 years they need to be replaced. So instead of this going and testing them and they may not have worked, he was nice enough to say that, why don't you budget for that item, because that's obviously a substantial expense, and we put that in our budget of this coming year that you'll see. I'd like to move on at this point to questions that was asked to me. I'm not sure the best format on this. I'd like to start with questions that I received from Chairman Barnes, but some of these questions have been mentioned by multiple members, so I think it might be easier for us if, once I go through the question, if there's any questions, we could just focus on that and then move on, if that's okay. Okay. The first question is for maintenance, is page 14 from Chairman Barnes. Provide details on the middle school field drainage. The book states that it's an ongoing issue, but it's the first time it's been addressed in the budget. And to start off with that, I'm wondering if Matt would like to start off with a little history about the middle school field.
Yes, thank you. The reason why you're seeing this the first time in your budget is it's been an issue ever since the school was built, as far as drainage on that field. But this past spring, there was a wetter than normal spring, so it really took its toll. And years ago, we did a little bit of excavation to do a drainage swale, because when the top field was built, it was a 30-foot cut into the side of a hill, and the base material that's there is all clay. So when the field was built, a good 10 to 12 inches of clay was taken out, gravel was put in, loose material was put in, material that would wick, and then the soil was put on, sprinkler system put in, and then the area was seeded. So the first few years, it was working and draining adequately for our needs. After a while, the drainage swale that's right next to the field, where you've got the top of the hill that comes down, you've got a drainage swale there, and then you've got the field, because there is actually water that you can see in the spring coming out of that hill. Let's say 10 feet down from the top of the hill, there's a little spring coming through, and that water leaches onto the field from the hill. And now the drainage swale, seeing we haven't updated it, we had a minor fix, but we want to do more of a major fix this time, doesn't wick and channel the water away from the field. So last spring into the summer, the field saw really little utilization, both in PE class and sporting events. And it's the goal of the board to look at, getting more area for play fields, long run, everything like that. It's the goal of the town. There was a field study done 6-7 years ago that said what the need was for Merrimack, and we're not even close to that.
I think it was 2010.
2010? Okay.
I was on it.
You were on it. Okay, yeah. I think Tim Tenhave was the chair of that.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. And so it expressed a need for fields that we don't have, and that field needs some reworking of the drainage system, which Tom and I, when the Mastercola parking lot was being done, and we had Steve Keach, our engineer, come and give us advice on the Mastercola Elementary School parking lot during the construction period, because it was rather challenging with the situation underneath that parking lot. Tom brought him up to the field and said, "Steve, what's your best thinking on a solution?" So the solution that Steve Keach recommended to us was, and I'll turn it over to Tom.
Okay, at the point where we had the swale that was servicing us, Steve felt that due to the glacier till, that is his words, not mine, the water would follow the glacier till down underneath the swale and then percolate up into the playing field. So his solution was to put in a deeper drain to wick the water away from the till when it comes through into the area. So he's mentioned to us a number of different remedies to it. This was what he would start with. This might fix it, it might not, but this is the first step in trying to repair that field, I believe, and so that's why it's sitting in our budget this year.
Okay. Cinda, I know you have questions on it too, I think.
Yeah, I was looking for a little more background on what the problem is, right? Are we canceling games? Are there safety concerns? I get that there's the drainage, but is it rendering it completely not usable? I just don't have a good understanding of what the perspective of the problem.
Okay. On that issue, I've spoke to the principal, Adam. He feels like I do. It's probably increased over the last couple of years. It impacts, I don't believe, we did not have a single baseball game up there this year. Now, some of that's due to snowfall, time of season, and all that. But we were unable to prepare the fields in time for them to even have a single game. Speaking with Adam up there, the principal, he does feel it impacts his PE classes, where there's sometimes after it rains, they don't even try to go up there because they know it's going to be unplayable. So I think it impacts us two ways, one with sports and one day-to-day PE classes.
I would also, just in answer to that question, I'd also point out that Athletic Director Mike Susi also would agree with Adam and Tom Tuso. This became more of an urgent thing for us when we were having conversations as recently as last year about turf field, and it brought up a larger question at the high school, and it brought up a larger question about how Merrimack has limited fields to begin with, and so given that fact, can we use the fields we have? And as a point of fact, as Tom said, and Mike Susi would support that, that is an entire field that for the most part is not usable for spring activities, which is, half of our school year, sports. And so that's the goal, is to try to reclaim the field that we, all the fields that we have, so that then we can see where do we stand when it comes to future need. Because it doesn't, our suggestion is it doesn't seem like we can fully answer the question about what are our future needs when we have property that we can't fully use for the purposes for which it was, built.
So that limits the MYA activity on that field as
Correct.
well, obviously.
That's correct.
Correct.
Especially after we had a big rain, or heavy rain, I should say. It takes quite a bit longer to dry out than it would a normal field, any other field that we have in the district.
So what is the MYA, what have they done in the last couple of years? Have they gone to Colesman, or they had to cancel practices and games, or?
They've been impacted like us. There's times it's just unplayable. What they do, I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that there is times that the field's unplayable, though.
Brandy, you might be able to shed light.
So last year in the spring, we weren't allowed to use it for soccer at all. So Colesman was used. The thing about that particular field is it's 11v11, which requires a certain amount of space for soccer, where the younger players can utilize smaller spaces at Reed's in the backfield and some of our other campuses that, you can just kind of have multiple teams playing. Reed's has probably 20 different teams playing against each other because they can with the smaller fields. 11v11 fields are hard to come by in our town, so Colesman was being utilized, but it really hurt us from a soccer perspective, and even lacrosse, I think, struggled just with space in general. So it is a challenge in Merrimack for sure, field space, but I think all sports, not only within the district, but also in the town, are affected.
I see Andy. And was your question answered first? So that I make sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're good? Okay, just make sure.
So you mentioned that Steve Keach had several different possibilities, and this was the one that he would try first.
Correct.
But he wasn't sure it was going to be successful. So at what scale did he think it would or wouldn't? I mean, the problem that I have is, if this is a problem that he's going to try something, we're going to throw $41,000 at it. I think that's the number. Is that the number? 41?
I think it's 75.
77. Sorry, I have too many numbers in my head. Are there? I guess the question is there any due diligence we should do to see whether this would do it before we invest that much money versus the other solutions? Because it seems weird to me that we would throw that money to solve it, then find out it didn't, and find out that we'd have to then take a whole nother set of solution that may or may not be compatible with what we tried. So that's my only question, is how well thought out has this been, and what's the risk of it working versus not working?
He was fairly certain that this is the first step. No matter what plan you use, this is the first step of what he would start with, because this will remedy some of it. Does it do 100%? He doesn't know, but he certainly feels strongly that this is a good portion of the problem.
Yeah, this isn't a case where you would take the money spent on this and have to tear it out and then do a whole new plan. This would be part one of the plan, and if it works, good for us. If not, we've got to go to phase two, which would require probably underground drains under the field itself.
But just to drive the point home,
This
this
is
would have
needed
to happen
anyway.
first.
Yes.
So it might
So-
solve it
so
100%.
So
or
it's a step, so it's the first step, it's not contradictory to the other steps or anything
correct.
like that. Okay.
Correct. And I think what Steve thinks is it could theoretically be the solution. But if it were not the solution, it would be the necessary first step that would be in place and would have to happen anyway.
So if this were to be in the budget, that the work would be done, for example, after July 1st, so that when we hit spring of 2021, we would be able to know then whether it solves it and be able to open the field up for more use. Is
That
an
would be,
accurate
certainly
timeline?
would be our hope.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're on the field for now.
Okay. Second question, Cinda, would be on page 12 and 13. It has to do with electrical. And looking at the 2018-2019 budget expenditures, we anticipated costs were far lower than actual. So, and it shows in that line item that Reed's Ferry was off by 5,000, Thornton's Ferry was off by 5,000, Muse was off by 6,000, ME was in there. It was on the first page out of the 2 pages. That was a little bit higher also. The high school, basically what happened is all our lines were lower than what, or more than what we expected. What we did that year was we took the highest amount expended in the last 2 years, which was 2016, 2017, and we used that sort of as our guide. And in looking back, we found that the increased cost in delivery of electric went up a great deal more. So what we did for a remedy in this upcoming year is we went back 3 years, took the highest expenditures in the last 3 years, and added 5%, and we think we're going to be closer into the more accurate with that. There's also another part that you talked about us purchasing it out, and that would be done by Matt. And Matt, would you like to talk to that?
Yes, we what we do is currently we're paying a little less than 8 cents a kilowatt, which is a rate we negotiated probably 2 years ago, and it's locked in till 2024. So even though you have the supply, the main supplier is Eversource. We have a broker who goes out and shops it around for us every few years and locks us into a long-term contract depending upon how he feels and how he views the market. We've been working with him for a lot of years. So we go out, he goes out, shops it out in the open market, and we try and get, let's say, he thinks rates are going down, so we try and lock in for a 2-year. This time we locked in for like maybe a 5-year lock-in rate. And so we're buying it from another source. We bought it from TransCanada. We bought it from a multitude of other sources. And this is, I believe, with Direct Energy. And so it's less than 8 cents a kilowatt, and that's going to be level. But the distribution charges from Eversource have gone up considerably. And so that was the spike in last year. And probably, you know, it was cold this winter, it was warm in the summertime, you've got air conditioning units, so we didn't measure the degree days or anything like that to try and come up with an apples to apples comparison, but the large increase was in the delivery charges that was approved by the Public Utilities Commission and granted to Eversource because they made a case for the clearing of more trees in the area because they had a lot of deferred maintenance over the years. And that was part of the rationale for the rate increase for the distribution, to clear their lines. So,
Right, but, and
that's what
that was actually the genesis of my question. Was it that our usage was up, or was it that the cost for what we normally use went up, and that is, it's truly the cost of what we normally use went up?
correct, yes.
Okay. Well, it's hard to project what the PUC is going to do. If you did that, you would probably be a millionaire.
And usage does fluctuate year to year with the weather, obviously,
Sure.
since it's air conditioning.
And that's it. I mean, what you did, I think, was the responsible. You took the highest amount in the prior couple of years. That's what, we always try to budget to the worst case scenario, but compound that with the delivery charges, then that threw you off about $5,000 a building on average.
Yes, yeah.
So that makes, puts our hands around it. So, and that's, you're using that methodology going to this year's budgeting, that you're going to have to deal with worst case scenario for delivery, plus, probably an increase for, unstable delivery charges through our PUC.
Right.
Okay. fair.
If you look at other utilities like oil and the retrofit to natural gas that we did a number of years ago, I did a quick calculation of 10 years worth of expenditures, and 10 years ago, let's say our oil bill for all the buildings, because everything was on number 2 fuel oil, the highest point was around $500,000 in oil, and now we're paying probably a little bit less than $400,000 for the natural gas and for the one building that is on oil. So the gas conversion that we invested in years ago, I think was a good move, because basically we're paying less now than we were 10 years ago.
Right. And just to that point, just to clarify that the reason that Reed's Ferry is on oil still is because we can't get the natural gas delivery because of its proximity to the line.
Liberty has to go over the highway to get there, over the highway, under the highway, well, however they want to get across the highway. And there's not enough revenue stream in that area for them to spend the money to make the connection for the line. Yet.
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 Fair. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Sidebar on the oil, but.
Next one we will move on to is a question about the windows, the window replacements. And the question reads, the summary of the window replacements mentioned the windows are no longer energy efficient. On what note or what cost impact are we expected for the loss of energy efficiency? Unfortunately, when we talk about windows, not common belief, but at least what happened to us is when we had Honeywell do a cost analysis, they could not save enough money by replacing windows to justify the cost. So it's kind of an elusive number that I'm throwing out there. There is some cost to it. Do I know the exact number? No, I don't. There's also some cost of draft and stuff like that going in classrooms, and how does that affect the learning environment? That's probably not my ballpark to talk about the learning environment, but it's something that we certainly work with the principals and stuff and that we're aware of. This is also an item that was a number of years ago on a SIP, and it ended up getting moved out a little bit further. So it's in this year's line item, and I would feel that the windows are roughly, probably a little more worn, but roughly in the same condition they were a few years ago. I mean, we still have windows that we're closing with wooden boards and stuff like that to hold them secure, but they haven't degraded to the point where every window's falling out of the frame. So that kind of, I hope that answers a little bit of the question, what impact it would have if we didn't do them next year. They would survive the same way they did this year, but again, we're looking at windows that are not super efficient or efficient in any way, and we're talking about windows that have to be locked with boards. So that's kind of the challenge right there.
Okay, I see Mark, and I think there are questions on that side too, but did you want to add to that for
I just
starters?
want to quickly add that
Absolutely.
Mrs. Putney is prepared to talk in more detail about the classroom quality environment for learning. So when that team comes, then they'll address that question again.
Thank you very much. And then I saw Brandy and Andy in either order.
So, just to be clear, I know we've talked about these windows in the past, and one of the large issues wasn't really the energy efficiency, but it was really around the structure of the windows and the fact they couldn't lock without the wood and things like that. And there was also a question about, do the windows that you put in, do they always open? And you talked about, or Matt, I can't remember the form, it was, but you talked about how there has to be egress potentially to be able to get out, that the windows, was it Matt or was it, I can't remember if it was the budget committee that asked the question or the planning and building committee, I don't remember. But the question was, new windows always still open, right? You don't have sealed windows because you got to worry about egress out of a classroom should an emergency occur. So the question I have is, we know that in order to lock some of the windows, you have to put a board in it. But can all the windows currently open so that if there's an emergency, kids can get out? In other words, do they function in the way that we need them to?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, it was hard to frame the question, but thanks.
Is this something that needs to be all done at once? Or is it something where we could spread it out to make it more effective for our budget? So some that are necessary, in your opinion, could be done sooner rather than later? Or is it more cost effective to do it in one?
I think you're right. There would be an economy of scale. So taking a big chunk at once would probably be the most beneficial. Can we take it in smaller steps? Yes, we can. The unit price would probably be a little bit more, but it can be done that way if that's an easier way to financially handle the bill.
Go ahead.
Set?
Yep.
Okay. The next question from Shannon would be on page 14, and it was talking about the oil. We had estimates. The estimates were way off on a couple of buildings. Definitely, it was the Reed's Ferry building and the superintendent's building. Actually, the problem from that comes in two different ways. One, the problem is why the superintendent's building looks like it used way too much oil is that the first year that we had Brentwood. So Brentwood's figures are sitting in the Supes building, and that's what skewed that. The second item would be the Reed's Ferry, why that one was so far off. When we do work on the oil tanks or the lines or the sensors or whatever, we need to take that and put that in some line. So it goes in the oil line. So what it's doing is reflecting some repairs. You'll see repairs in that account, and that's why that one was so far off.
Brandy.
Are we anticipating more repairs for it to be moving from 38 to 45?
No, 45, what it does is that keeps us on that line item. We took I believe it was the 2 years of highest expenses, and what we did is we basically carried expenses ahead. I anticipate that line going down and flattening back out, but we didn't take out the price of repair, so we kind of carried it forward, and I believe that line will go down as we go on. Okay. Then I'm going to move, if it's okay, to the next set of questions I got was from Andy, and we talked in regards to the field drainage already. He asked, there's a question here that I got another question about it also, about room 112 at the high school. It was the old TV studio that we got as videography, which was very nice to see them here earlier. What I was doing while that presentation was going, and I was looking at the wall that's in the center of that room. There's a temporary wall, or somewhat temporary wall, that was put in the center of that room eons ago. We had an abatement of that floor in 2011 and 2012 underneath that wall that was never removed because it was a somewhat permanent wall. I believe is still some asbestos. So the amount of $2,800 that you see is basically the abatement that we're going to have to do when we take the wall down, plus fixing the floor and fixing the ceiling. And that's what it encompasses.
See, this is Tom. You know, instead of looking at the video with the kids, he's looking at the room and the wall he has to take
Well,
down.
I thought we were out of the asbestos business, but we're finding little bits here and there.
Well, whenever you go and you open up something, and you know you are liable to find something, and that's the way it is.
It's a law. We test. Anytime we do anything, we test. We make sure we're doing the right thing for students, staff, and employees.
Yeah,
All you had
that's
to do is
the
put
one.
the
That's
asbestos word in there, and I would have probably not asked the question. So
Sorry. Okay, and that the other question that Andy had for us was talking about the cost of gas, electric, and oil at Brentwood. In my budget, I believe Matt has got a line in the overall budget for taking down that building, Brentwood, at this point.
So
And-
let me give you the context.
Okay,
to help.
I'm sorry.
So you're right. In our initial planning in the CIP, there's a $125,000 line item to take down the Brentwood building, but also baked into that is an assumption that in the budget already in other places, there's another $40,000 that is what the estimate is to keep the Brentwood building functioning or not dying, so to speak. There, meaning the total is $165,000 to ultimately take it down. That's how Matt explained the number was crafted. So what I tried to do was dissect the budget and find out whether that $40,000 was real or not, and all I could find was $23,000. So the question is, aside from the propane, the oil, the electric, and the water and sewer costs, are there any other costs used to keep Brentwood alive during a year?
No. And that 125, Tom and I have been talking about taking down Brentwood for a while. We have ongoing conversations about that. And I think after he's doing some testing as far as what's in there, so we can get a better handle on it. But our assumption is any asbestos that's in the building is not as much as we had thought. So we would still be within budget, even though we have in the CIP 165. We could still do it with $143,000. So we could still grab those utilities, add it to the 125, and take that building down. Because I've just recently gotten some updated pricing as we get closer and closer to this for the demolition of that building through my conversation with Sullivan. So
there's 2 points I want to make about this and the reason that I'm asking. First is the background for people listening to this that are still carrying the torch saying that we bought an albatross by buying this building by the district. I want to make clear it was the land that we bought and not the building. And we've always positioned that if we could use the building, great. But if not, the goal was to have the land, so we owned the property around it. So I want to make sure first that the decision to dismantle Brentwood is not something that, oh crap, we made a mistake. It is part of the process. And the diligence that we as a board did found that trying to restructure it at all to be an SAU sped building was not cost effective. So I want to make sure that that's understood. The reason specifically for my questions is because it's felt by the budget committee last year and by us that expending the funds to tear down Brentwood and make it into sort of a usable hard pack space initially would save the district money. I mean, there's the question about whether we should take it down because it looks ugly or something, but I think the financial reason was we don't want to spend $40,000 a year to keep the building up if we can't use it. So let's spend the money, take it down so we save it. Well, now you're talking about a run rate of about half as much is what was planned.
Because it's really kept at.
Right.
The $40,000 figure was initially given to us by the previous owners of Ceres to keep it up to
Functioning and
livable
usable
temperatures.
when they were allowed to use it
Yes.
in their current format. Correct. The reason is, and this is not for decision today, but I want the information, is when we get into deliberations about the adjustments to the budget, I think that we have different data now than we did about whether we plan the $125,000 incremental this year to take it down, given it's only $23,000 to keep it alive. It's different than 40. I know that we ultimately want to take it down. I know that there's likely to be discussion at Budget Committee about you should take it down, you idiots, kind of thing, right? But I want us to make the right fiscal decision as part of this. So I wanted to, again, I appreciate the data because I think that discussion is going to happen.
Can I throw out one other thing?
Certainly.
Which probably enters in, but we haven't planned for it. Certainly, if to keep it in, we would have to update the fire alarm system and stuff like that, and it doesn't count in here any type of repairs that we need to do to the
Right,
boilers and stuff.
But the question is, if we just leave it unoccupied and just keep it there the way that it is, my understanding is we don't need to replace the fire panel and we don't need to make any repairs. This is just keep it on life support until we either have the direction or the funds to take it all the way down.
Correct on life and support the thing, but the boilers, if they go down, they need to be repaired.
So there's a risk of keeping it up, that if something fails, there's a maintenance cost.
An
that would
additional
come up for
cost,
it.
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Cinda.
I mean, that's definitely a decision we're going to have to make sooner rather than later. But what would be helpful, at least for me, would be to get a one-pager with all of the details on the page, like, the risks, what the hard costs are, what potential risk costs are, and then have it as I think we need to have more discussion on that item.
Predicated on its being left unutilized.
Right.
Okay.
What's the true cost, right, of
Yeah.
not tearing that down this year?
Right.
And, I mean, for me personally, I'm reluctant to tear it down this year, but I need the data to make that decision, because I want to know that we have a true plan for everything else before we start tearing down buildings. That's all, just prudent.
Right.
But if it's, if we're looking at potential risks that are going to outweigh, at least for me, my sense of being prudent, then I want to make sure that I have a firm understanding of all of those risks and what the worst case, best case scenario are of those risks in the gray areas around what the cost is of keeping that building there.
Right, and just to add on to that, I think to a person on this board, we believe that building should be taken down. But given the budget numbers that have been put in front of us, we're looking creatively at everything. And this is one of those that I've personally wanted to look at to say what is the right financial thing to do this year to minimize the impact to taxpayers, so.
Are we all set with that? Okay. I
Got
think
Good.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. Questions from Cinda. And this is for maintenance here. This is on page 2. Can you please provide me the amount of money that the district has spent in rubbish removal in the past 7 years, which Matt was so kindly gave us a printout about that. In 2018-19, we spent approximately $14,000 more than expected. I'm interested in seeing if it's a trend. Also, when was the last time we switched vendors or went out for bid? This is the case that we go out for bid every single year. We've always gone out for bid. Looking back at the chart, I can tell you, I remember in 2010 and 2011, we had a vendor that we've used for a couple of years, and that was certainly a switch when we went to 11, 12, as you see the dip there. That vendor was with us, winning the bid every year, all the way through into 2017 and 18. And that year, they did not put a bid in. And we were a little concerned. So the winning bid went to the new company, which was the $55,476. The following year, our old vendor did come back, and we got a number of vendors, but the vendor won the year before also won that year, and it went up to 67,314. A little bit concerned because it's escalating so much, so what we did do is ask what we thought their increase might be this year, and they told us roughly they felt that if we wanted, it would be 7%. And we said, thank you very much, and we're going out for bid again. So do we see it as a trend? It's certainly unusual, but we certainly go out for bid every year to try to do everything that we can to make sure we're getting the best price.
So why do you think that, because just if my math is correct, maybe 21% maybe increase from 2017 to 2018-19. Why do you think is it just that was the lowest bidder, or
we
is there
just had a vendor that really wanted us, and to tell you the truth, I think the company, the salesperson lived in the district, and they just really wanted Merrimack. And when that salesperson moved on, we didn't get the same bid. We got an open bid, or what every other town gets. So I'm hoping that we'll end up with another more aggressive bid.
Okay, so you're budgeting for a higher amount.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just in case we can't get a better bid, like the worst
Absolutely.
case scenario.
The hometown discount, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes me feel a little better. All right, thank you.
And you had a question about that as well?
Yeah. So, just out of curiosity, so I've been using the same vendor in town for trash pickup forever, and my price hasn't changed in 15 years. Have we gone, I mean, you go out to bid, have you proactively reached out to the local vendors that we use to see?
Yes.
I'm just curious why it's gone up so much unless the volume has gone up. Or is it because commercial accounts are done at a different rate or something like that? It just seems a little strange.
It's certainly, I hate to use this term, but it is what it is, but we do go out with many different vendors, and we've certainly would welcome anybody who would like to add their name to the list if they can take care of us and do a great job for us, and it would be beneficial for all.
I mean, is it possible to get in the bid process, to get sometimes, where I work, would we offer, when we renew a contract or something, we might offer a 3-year or something like that to keep it down or keep it lower. I mean, is a 3-year contract something that we should be looking at?
I don't think that's anything we've ever considered, because we've been always trying to keep the bids each year. Maybe Matt,
in the past, in the not too distant past, this rubbish bid has been like a prize fight from back in the day when boxing was king. And you get people coming in looking to get this business. This year, for whatever reason, there wasn't that hunger in the marketplace to come in and get the business. And bless you. And we really felt that, because we've had people look at the bids. Remember this, Tom?
Mhm.
And a couple of people got a little bit angry because they weren't awarded the bid, and they tried to justify this, justify that, and we took the low price. And sometimes one year we didn't take the lowest bid because the service was lousy, quite frankly. So we have a clause in the bid that says, we can do, we reserve the authority to do what's in the best interest of the district. And that vendor beforehand, missed pickups, left crap all over the place, and we, didn't accept that bid. And we went with another one that was slightly higher. So I think perhaps looking at a longer, maybe what we can do is this: give me your 1 year
Yep.
bid price, and then give me an option for 3.
Yes, and then you can choose. You can look
Right.
at everything and then see if you can get a lower rate if you went 3 years
Yes.
with one of those vendors.
Yes, it's kind of like what we do with transportation. We do, in order to get a good transportation company in here, you know, they've got to invest heavily on capital assets and everything like that. So when we put it out to bid, we put it out for a 5-year term. You know, same thing with special ed transportation too, because there's a big investment in buses and infrastructure. You see next to Dunkin' Donuts, the STA new headquarters. They used to be off of Star Drive, and now they're right there where Dunkin' Donuts is, and they have a brand new facility, and they're constantly updating their fleet. They're going to be coming to the end of their contract pretty soon, not in this budget year, but in the next budget year, and that's something we need to talk about in the future. But I think to put a 1 year option with an option for 3, I think it's a good idea.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. Do you feel that we have enough cameras or security systems to support the school district? Matt and I had a conversation about this. Actually, we probably have a conversation about this subject a couple times a year. And we think at this point we're in a good place. If you recall last year's budget, the school board added $50,000 to add cameras at our elementary schools and the Mastacola complex. And also above that, Matt secured some funding that you can speak about.
Yeah, we've got some grant money from the state, around $50,000 extra, that was signed off and accepted through Homeland Security. And Homeland Security went through all of our buildings, 4 hours each, easily.
Met with all the principals.
Oh yeah, met with all the principals, and they really liked what we were doing. And they really liked what we were doing with cameras. Conversely, another district to our immediate north, that shall remain nameless, built a brand new middle school and a brand new high school and didn't have a single camera in it. And they said, can't you talk to your neighbors at the north in order to get them to go for some sort of grant for security cameras? Because there are none in those buildings. Yeah, wow. That's a case of not spending money unwisely. So, you know, we have a high school. The high school, I think, is blanketed really nicely with cameras. We do some upgrades to we've been phasing out the analogs, putting in the IPs. So, I don't know, I think unless I still have a grant request from the Public Infrastructure Fund awards sitting out there, because that totally hasn't been wrapped up yet. So I'm hoping at some time the governor will, or the commissioner of education will see fit to let some of that grant money go, because I still have an application in for a few $100,000. And if we get that money, we'd like to saturate more with the cameras at the elementary schools, the upper elementary schools, and a lot of the exterior areas we have. But we would like to do it with the grant money instead of taxpayer money. So this is something we're looking at and waiting. You know, instead of looking at putting $46 million towards charter schools, I'd like them to release that money so we could get some funds to increase our infrastructure. So,
And also with that, as Matt and I talked, we're probably going to wait a year, do a little pause on cameras, making sure that what we put in is in the right places, and we will probably recircle back in a year or maybe two and look at it again in a budget cycle, but for now, we're fairly happy with that.
Yep.
And just to clarify, the camera that was installed this year at the skate park is actually tied into our system?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
It's a wonderful camera.
Long overdue camera. Thank you.
Okay, there's a number of other questions that Cinda had, but we've tied up quite a few of them. Going down to the question on page 5, and it talks about the, can you tell us more and provide further breakdown of the $379,837 associated with the mechanical/NG management maintenance agreement? And basically what that line does is it provides, we buy a service from a vendor, and they provide, take care of our boilers, hot water heaters. They replace pumps, valves, compressors, condensers. They work on the VAV boxes. They work on exhaust fans, and they replace filters twice a year in all our schools. So that's just sitting out there as a maintenance contract. Plus, they do take care of all the technology that has to do with it. As you know, everything is driven by technology. When it turns the pump off, when it turns it up, we cool the school down and do that. It's all part of that program that they work with it, and that's what they do for us.
Sorry, I was writing notes.
So the question I have is, if they cover all that for our boilers and everything else, they don't cover the pressure release valves that you got to budget for separately?
No, they cover anything that can be anything can move or spin or be greased. Any solid piping or relief valves is excluded.
Sounds like a warranty on a car that you buy, well, whatever.
Yeah. The other point I want to point out in what you asked for is also a little background about that account. That account has been around for, I believe, 13 years now. For the last 13 years, it has been going up at an average rate of, well, actually 3% a year. And that was part of the contract that was signed. And this year, the contract ended, but we did ask them for a price to extend a year, and it is at 3%. Plus, there's also an addition to that because we picked up service contracts on the additional air conditioning that we've been putting in through some of John's programs, and that was an addition of $16,731 too.
Yeah, well, thanks for that information, because
Okay.
although when we look in our budget books, we have kind of the near future, but sometimes I just like to see more than just 2 years, so thanks for providing that info for me.
Then on the next item, it was be on page 7. We're talking about the maintenance energy/lighting retrofit. That's the lease program that we had through Honeywell. We've been making installment payments on that, which ended last year. And the warranty part of that is that they guaranteed that we would pay for that program out of the savings, and that ended. So that warranty ends as far as we don't need any more because it's already paid for itself at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And what is that amount? It's
It's around, is that for the 467, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Before, yeah.
$467,000 we won't see going forward into the future because we've
Correct.
already paid for it?
Yeah,
This is
that's,
the last year?
yes,
Last year was last year.
Last
Well, the
year, so
one we're
not- so
sitting in
the-
right
Yeah,
now
right.
is the last time we paid it.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, so it's not in this particular
So for
budget
the
right now.
2021, it's a 0, and we show that
Gotcha.
in your book as 0. So it comes out of the operating budget, and because it was a lease and it was voted on by the legislative body, it also is removed from the default budget. So
Okay.
it goes down on both sides.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
Are there any other questions for Tom and maintenance? Seeing none, the hot seat is probably boiling right now. It's been a long night for with a lot of your predecessors, so we thank you for everything, and we appreciate your hard work on this.
Thank you.
So we are on item number 8, which is confirming school board budget hearing dates. So we did hear from the chair of the budget committee, and there was a request. I know we had set some dates, but based on the timeline that they were looking to have the budget as well, they asked if we could make some adjustments at tonight's place setting. We do have those updated dates, and we will go through them accordingly. So today's board meeting covered technology, library, media, services, food service, and maintenance. That's obviously what we did tonight was ask questions and clarifiers of what was presented to us, which we'll be doing for the next few meetings. Monday, January 6th, we will be covering Mastrocola Elementary School, Reeds Ferry Elementary School, Thorntons Ferry Elementary School, and James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School. Again, where we will be providing questions to get better understanding of what was presented to us. Tuesday, January 7th, would be the Merrimack Middle School, Merrimack High School, Student Services, and district-wide budgets. Tuesday, January 14th is the new date, which we were supposed to have it on the 20th, and it's been asked to be moved up. So we would be looking to have additional meetings with any departments, if necessary, and then go over the potential warrant articles that we would have to discuss. This is basically, at this point, I'm just going to get clarifiers with Mark. At what point will we look to make those hearing changes? So again, if there are any adjustments we want to make to the budget, so that we can get to the budget committee in such a time that they would have time to deliberate on the budget that we actually move and present. So again, the next stage would be, once we vote on the budget, it would go to the budget committee, and what is at the deliberative session is actually the budget committee's final deliberation of the budget. So just for process sake. So would we be prepared Tuesday the 14th to go through the adjustments and hearings, I assume? Make any adjustments to the budget based on all the testimony that we're getting from all the departments, and be able to move that budget forward, and then have warrant article discussion and move that forward as well.
Yes.
So that is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so basically, unless, weather permitting, we will have the final budget into the budget committee's hands Tuesday, January 14th. If for any reason weather does not permit, we'd be looking to move to a January snow date the next day, Wednesday, January 15th. And that would be the makeup day. And everything would move over one based on the hearing dates. Andy?
A couple of comments. So first, this means that based on what I'm extrapolating, that our school board meeting on Tuesday, January 21st, which is moved because Monday, January 20th is Martin Luther King Day.
Correct.
That will directly conflict with the first budget committee meeting that they have on the budget. Because you guys meet on Tuesdays, so I'm assuming if you want the budget by the 14th or 15th, you want to be able to discuss it starting on the 21st. Is that do you know? I'm not here to represent. Oh, I'm just curious. We can find out, but I think it is a potential conflict because one of the school board may need to have representation there.
Right, we would definitely be having our meeting as
on the same Tuesday.
For that same Tuesday, absolutely we would.
Right. So, but the other question I've got, being pragmatic about this, so we've got a meeting on the 6th and a meeting on the 7th where we're going to go through all the different departments. In the past, and especially this year, I would imagine when we have proposals to administration to potentially remove things from the budget so we can look at different lines, we don't have a lot of runway to be able to discuss those and be able to receive those and consume those and allow administration to go back to departments to get information. So I think this means it's forcing us, for example, on the meeting on the 6th, if we believe that we have any adjustments we'd like to see made in those areas that are presented, we may need to talk about those. And the next night, after hearing the other ones, we may have we as a board need to be prepared to act very quickly and we may not have the luxury of some of the extra time we've had in the past to go through some scenarios. So that's the only fear I have with this compressed schedule.
Understood.
So it's an excellent point. The one thing, and I was prepared to say this under comments, but I can say it now because it's connected. So the date for the primary has been set for February 11th, and so what that means is that there'll be no school that day. That's on the calendar denoted, when the Secretary of State determines that. So that's a Tuesday, and that's typical. That would be when the Budget Committee would meet, but that's a day that is taken away from the Budget Committee, and that only happens every so often. So that fact is a contributor to an accelerated schedule. Just happens to be the way things fall this particular year. So the point is, you make the point that it is very expedited, and I totally understand that. There is a reason for that.
No. It's just, so the process is, and to those that are listening here, so, and Shannon's described it, but we've received the proposed budget from the administration. We as a board are now going through department by department through these reviews to get the input on it so that we as a board can decide if we want to see any adjustments, right? That's the whole preparation. And in the past, we've had multiple days, multiple meetings, and generally the meeting of around Martin Luther King's birthday has allowed us to be that last discussion, and usually at that meeting, we close the budget. So what we're being asked to do now is move that a week earlier, which having an extra meeting is not a problem. It's the time to be able to digest and allow you to react. So my only caution would be, I can see we're going to have to use the 15th date as a work date. And it means that administration is going to have to be able to turn on a dime if we want to see some changes. So it's the only other alternative we have is to push back in the Budget Committee and say, you guys need to be more flexible to be able to meet more frequently than your Tuesdays cadence. So I'm raising this. I don't have a problem with us putting the stake in the ground, but I think we need to realize that there is risk in this. I don't know.
Agreed.
I don't know, Shannon, from a...
No. And honestly, this came up today, so we're really trying to be accommodating. What I would say to this is, under no circumstances, this is a best-case scenario, but under no circumstances is the board going to present a budget to the Budget Committee that we're not ready to present. So if it does take a delay, we will openly communicate via administration to the Budget Committee why deliberations will be delayed. This is what I will call our best faith effort to deliver them a budget with enough time, considering these new obstacles with the primary, to be able to be collaborative. So, but under no circumstances are we as a board, or me as chair, openly asking anyone to shortcut the process for the sake of a deadline. So we've never done that before. We're not going to start now. So, as far as I'm concerned, but we are again trying to do our best faith effort to be collaborative. So on that note,
so are you asking whether we're available?
Yes. So I guess that's the biggest question too. Is that's a very good question. If there's a conflict in schedule from that, I know that we have classes at night and all that we may have to be dealing with. Cinda?
I just have one conflict, but it's only the snow date. Otherwise, the dates work for me.
Great. So, and I think best case scenario is we're not meeting during blizzards, so that's always the best case scenario, though it's happened. So I think we're all good. Okay, wonderful. So Mark, if you would mind having this posted back up on our website with the updated alert, that would be appreciated. So we are on to item number 9, 2020 NHSBA Delegate Assembly. So I'm just going to preface this. I am the immediate past president of the New Hampshire School Boards Association. What you're about to discuss, I voted on not only in the executive committee meeting, but at the general board meeting. So at this point, I'm going to recuse myself from this agenda item and turn it over to Cinda to run this part.
Okay, so the 2020 New Hampshire School Board Association Delegate Assembly is on Saturday, January 25th, 2020. Naomi is our board rep for that. there's a couple of things with this agenda item. First and foremost is if you have feedback on any of the resolutions for that meeting, to please get that information over to Naomi. And then secondly, one thing that has come up is sometimes these resolutions change. So the question is, as a board, will we allow Naomi to represent us using her best judgment? So what happened last year, maybe Naomi, why don't you go ahead and explain your experience and then.
Yeah, so there are really, so far I've done this a couple of times, and there are a few different ways that it can go. For the most part, what the board has done is expressed its viewpoint on each of the items that was going to come up, and then I committed to voting that way. The problem is that once I'm there, these change. There are amendments that are brought up that can change them substantially, and conversation happens, at which point the only thing that I have been able to do in order to remain true to what I've been asked to do by the board is recuse myself from to abstain from that vote. Because I can no longer vote yes on the original, it no longer exists, and I haven't had the flexibility to vote any other way than the lockstep that I was given. And so what I wanted to do was bring forward to the board the question of whether that is your preferred approach, or if you would like there to be some flexibility in my representing what I understand your positions to be. I'm okay with either one, but I wanted you to be aware of what was happening once I got there.
Thank you. So I, for one, am okay with Naomi representing us in her best efforts. We all do that when we represent the board, albeit Parks and Rec or the Budget Committee, and I feel like this is along the same lines. So at least for this year, I would say you have my approval. I don't know if we need to take a vote on it. It doesn't seem like it's a real formal thing.
I'm good.
But,
I'm fine.
But I think you have our permission then to proceed accordingly.
We're not going to verify and trust. We're going to trust first.
So with the trust.
Okay. That said, we are on to item number 10, which is the approval of November 18th, 2019 and December 4th, 2019 minutes. We'll start with November 18th. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Made by Cinda, seconded by Andy. Are there any adjustments to the minutes?
Are we on just November 18th?
Just November 18th, yes.
Okay.
We had different attendees at different, so.
I just want to make sure I was there.
And all were accounted for.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 5-0-0. On to December 4th, 2019. Entertain a motion to approve, made by Andy, seconded by somebody, Brandy. Are there any adjustments to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Abstain. The motion carries 3-0-2 with Vice Chair Gualiumi and Board Member Schoenfeld abstaining. On to item number 11, consent with John.
Thank you. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have approval of the graduate student Mary Quigley's request to conduct research in Merrimack School District.
I'll entertain a motion made by Andy.
I move we accept the consent agenda as read.
Second? Seconded by Naomi. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries 5-0-0. We are on to item number 12, other, Part A, correspondence. Is there any correspondence come before the board? Cinda?
Oh. We all received one from our state rep, Rosemary Rung, I think.
Correct.
And that was, I just wanted to get that out there. So she was just giving us a heads up on, there was something she wrote us about. That's the only one I wanted to ask about.
I think there was, that was the one we were, she reviewed at our last meeting with all of the upcoming
Okay.
potential bills. Yep.
Okay.
She was actually at our meeting and reviewed those with us.
Okay, then
And then I did have one from a constituent who asked what is considered discretionary spending in our budget. And with that, a list was compiled. It was verified by Assistant Superintendent for Business Chevenel to make sure it was thorough and accurate, and was provided back to the constituent. Are there Is there any other correspondence to come before the board? I thought I saw your hand going up, so sorry. Seeing none, we'll go to comments. Are there any comments? Naomi?
So I don't actually know if this fits in comments, new business, or something else, but I thought I'd throw it out here, and that is when we were talking about, this came up both during the conversation and during the public comment, and that is the audit issue. I was wondering whether we might want to put out some information to the website, as we have other times, regarding the process for the budget and a few other facts like that that seem pertinent. We've done some really nice releases of information in previous years that clarify that, and it might be a good time to do so.
We
Absolutely.
could come up with something, yeah.
Maybe Matt will do one of his famous videos.
I could do that.
There you go. Talk about the RSAs.
I'd have the high school kids tape me because they did a good job.
They did.
Yeah.
So that would be great. So are there any other comments? I see Brandy and Andy.
Can we also add the schedule? I know I thought we did that last year, but the budget process schedule to our website and to our Facebook page and any other outlets that we may have.
Yes, now that it's been discussed and approved, yep, it go up tomorrow.
But I think you're also talking about when the deliberative session might be and the voting
All
and
of
the
that.
steps.
Process.
The whole,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yep.
okay.
And obviously the changes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Tentative. Yeah. So projected. I'm sure you can use a good term. So I see Andy, then Cinda.
I think it's ironic, we've been here so long and we still have lots to say, right? First of all, I'd like to thank folks for taking an interest in the budget this year. I mean, it's nothing like a good $81 million proposed budget to get people out of their seats and paying attention. I would encourage people that are watching to pay attention to what we discuss. I'm hoping that people that are here saw some of the detail that we go through just with the first three departments. The real meat is coming up when we get closer, especially into district-wide and some other things. So our discussions get pretty deep, as do the budget committee's discussions when they get into that. So there's certainly no shortage of discussion. There's no shortage of opportunity to sit in front of us as we go through this. There are some long nights, but hey, what the heck. One of the things that concerned me in reading a lot of the stuff on social media, and by the way, we do, some of us, at least I do, read social media. There's been some collusion description that the default budget is done in a wonky way by a couple of people. And I'd like to make sure that people pay attention. If you go to the district website and you go to the budget section, it talks about all the different budget sections. And one of the things it talks about default budget. There is no wonkiness. There's no underhanded conspiracy around the default budget that's done. We're very clear about what it is. And for those that want to understand why it always goes up by a certain amount every year, if you go to the budget summary, it describes the fixed items and how much they go up every year, such as healthcare, 8.5%, salaries, a certain percent, the New Hampshire retirement contribution, how much it goes up. So that when you look and say, why did our budget go up $2 million without doing anything? It's because in order to do business, the cost goes up before we even touch anything. And then we adjust things beyond that. So I know that different people have different views on the default, but the way we do it is definitely completely transparent. And I just want to make sure people understand that, because knowing what gets done and having done this for a while really gets under my skin when they say the default budget is done in a not appropriate way. So,
Did you want to add something to that, Brandy?
I do. Something else that I just want to clarify is it's really hard to compare our district to neighboring districts. And I understand the desire to do so, but there are some factors present in other districts that are not necessarily present in ours, and vice versa. So to compare one budget to another budget, or what one school does and what one district does to what another district does, there's a lot that isn't necessarily known. Bedford has a whole different element to their budget that we don't have. So I think there's just a lot of different areas that are not necessarily well known, that are all contributing factors to a budget and the budget process, as well as district to district changes that are not necessarily accurate for our district. So Those that want to be involved, I'm so excited to get their feedback and have them be involved. But that being said, before comparison becomes a thing, I would really encourage people to do their research on other districts before comparing ours to those. That's all.
Thank you. And Cindy, your hand was up.
Yeah, this is just one, nothing completely urgent, but something that I think has come up before, and I think, Naomi, I think you've mentioned it before too, which is the way we organize our materials for our meetings online. So what I would hope to see is, I don't think we have like a folder, like where each meeting we have, like if we had, for example, maybe we could do today's meeting and a link to the video that we showed, or certain items will say after a meeting, please post this, to our website. But if someone looking like 6 months down the road may not be able to link whatever that was back to that particular meeting. So I just think that if we could look at how we're organizing the materials, might make it more efficient for those that are seeking those materials.
Okay, lots of comments tonight, and all very good.
Could I make a
Sure.
brief?
Glad to.
I just want to kind of extrapolate upon what Andy had said. I don't look at the social media piece. I don't have access to it. I don't care to. But it was conveyed to me that in the creation of the default budget, and I was around when the law was first created back in the early 90s, so I know what it is. I've taught seminars on the default budget, so I know what it is. I know what the current laws are. But there's a statement meant that we only add, we never subtract. So let me go over the subtractions for you. The $325,000 for the Master Cole Elementary School parking lot was taken out of the default budget. The Honeywell lease for $467,482 was taken out of the default budget. The transfer to capital reserve, which was a warrant article, which was $200,000, was taken out of the default budget. And the decrease in debt service interest of $53,038.50 was taken out of the default budget. So I just want to go on the record with that.
Thank you. I might as well make a comment on social media. Do we read it? Sure. We've been called liars already this year. That was great. So that was fun. We've also had lovely comments about our Joy for Donuts. So this is something where, there's a constructive way of communicating with us. We have phones. We have emails. We shop at Shaw's and Market Basket because we know a lot of you shop at Market Basket. It's okay. But on that note, we're very approachable. We're your neighbors. We're not here. I mean, this does not put a good look on it. We have a big wall in front of us, but we're very approachable, and we are all here for the same thing. We want a good community. We want a good school system for our kids. We comb through this book. I was elected in 2010. This is my 10th book. And I don't take it lightly. You'll see my questions are extensive every single year because I don't take the job lightly. So we do appreciate the feedback. We want it to be, we do understand the concerns, but we need to have a constructive conversation about what can be changed, what can't be changed. What we look at, I think if you look back at our deliberations over the years, you will see that we asked a lot of very direct questions. And the biggest question is, what is the consequence of the cut? If we do have a cut, what are we giving up? What happens to the classroom? What happens to the student? What happens to the educational outcomes if we don't have the funding? If we cut this program? When you look at the discretionary funding, when we did compile it, again, what's important to one parent's not important to another. So a discretionary fund is sports. So the family that has soccer and football and lacrosse players is passionate. The one who has kids who don't play those sports may not be as passionate. But by the way, so is co-curriculars. So those kids that were in the quiz bowl their program gets cut too, because if all discretionary funding gets cut. And we were talking about world language. And we offer 5 foreign languages at Merrimack High School. We offer Spanish, French, Latin, Mandarin, and Arabic, the only school in the state to offer Arabic. It's gotten our students into some of the better schools in this country because we offer something no one else can. But what is discretionary? World language grades 5 through 8. So, but is it a good idea? We as a board have historically said to all of these things, no, it's not a good idea to cut because it brings something to every student that gets them further in their life and in their either college or career readiness. So we are absolutely open to hearing constructive criticism, and we welcome it, we applaud it. We love seeing people come here and learning the process. And if you have questions on what the process is, again, we're a phone call away, we're an email away. And, we always, I think, take more time in the grocery store than it takes to get groceries because we're always willing to talk to a neighbor. So this is the first night of a long process. We look forward to talking with you further at home. For those who came here, thank you for sitting through it. Those seats are not the most comfortable, but we've been in worse. But we thank you, and we thank you for trusting us to go through this process diligently. We will not take it lightly, we promise. So on that note, I will close comments. Is there any new business to come before the board? Item number 13. Seeing none. Item number 14, committee reports. Are there committee reports? I'm going to start with Johanna.
So on behalf of the student council, this has come from a while back, but for the parking issue at the high school, they wanted me to bring to the board the suggestion of assigned parking spots. So they can be tabled for now, and they were busy with the budget, but I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Andy, you were next.
Yeah, last Tuesday we had a budget committee meeting. They did their organization discussion. There is a open seat on the budget committee. There was a resignation, so they're they're actively recruiting. If anybody has interest, reach out to the chair of the budget committee, who's Stan Heinrich. He's I'm not sure the publicized process, but he'd be the one to contact should anybody interested in the budget committee opening. And also, one of the things that was done at that meeting is Matt presented the results of the previous year's budget, talking about what money was returned to taxpayers and the details behind it. We have not been presented that at this table, but I was fortunate to hear it the other night, and it was over $3 million returned to the taxpayers. And I'm hoping at some point that this table is allowed to hear Matt do the presentation because it was pretty insightful. It was good. So.
Thank you, Andy. I did have one committee report, the Parks and Rec Department committee. So I'm the board rep, and we participated in the holiday parade. So through the holiday parade, basically, that happened on January 8th or December 8th. Wow, I'm in budget mind. And I just wanted to let you know, 20 organizations participated. There was also a candy cane hunt that was put on by another group that coordinated with Parks and Rec. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. And then the tree lighting happened after the parade at 4 o'clock. So it was, I think this is still a very good community, and I'm, glad that we have the opportunity to partake in that committee as well, and offer influence. So that's what we have for committee. Item number 15 is public comments on agenda items. Anyone from the public that would like to come and speak, please state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we will close. Oh, absolutely. If you could come to the microphone, you have to state your name and address for the record, and just make sure that the light is on.
I'm surprised there isn't anyone else. Really? After all of this.
Honestly, not that we're really supposed to engage, but every year we usually deliver the budget to an empty room. So this is a, refreshing. So thank you for coming. So your name and address for the record, please.
Mm-hmm. Hi, my name is Charles LaFond, 7 Linden Way.
Thank you.
I'd have to say this is my first school board meeting in a very long time. I haven't been since you've been in this building, so you tell you that's been a very long time. 2 comments as you guys went up. One was the middle school I'm very concerned about that middle school. It's built on a wetland. It's built on the old Bucher site. They used to do four-wheeling off it. Okay, the school is basically the only part that was built high. I heard you talk about the other field. I think you're going to have mixed results with it. I think we have problems with flooding in there. I think what you're starting to see now is they're starting to blow out construction just to the other side of it, and I think what you're starting to see is what you saw happen when they opened up conservation, which is flooding down in that zone. That's the low spot right there on that corner. The other thing, I'm just speaking for myself. The one thing that makes me most fearful and why I'm coming to this is because of the building that's going on out there on the streets and everything that's going around the town. It's like all of a sudden madness has just broke out. So that's why I'm here. And you're right. Most of the time, the school board doesn't waste my time, doesn't waste my money, but every once in a while, all of a sudden, something comes up. A brand-new building shows up filled with offices. I heard it was supposed to be something to make it so that our school stays certified. I thought it was classrooms and teaching, and it didn't end up being. It was because our offices were below standard size. We had to have an emergency building built over at the high school to put in all this brand new offices and stuff to make, anyways. Think back, you'll see it. So when the new superintendent's building, or the old superintendent, or whatever, the green building outside in the parking lot. Yeah, I volunteered to teach at Brentwood. I still throw that up. I'm an engineer in math, so I like to work with kids that need a little extra help. But anyways, that one there scared us. Okay, I say that because all my friends and me, we're all scared of that one. So when I heard that we might be saving the building, we might be going at it a little bit smarter, I felt a lot better. I don't think we should save the building. I really think you need to do something. But I like the fact that you slowed the process down. And I like the fact that you slowed the process down at the middle school with that field. I really think you got to watch that field. And with that, I'll just conclude it. The only reason I say that is because I lived there long enough. I lived right up the street from it. And I know every little cut that was made, every little thing that went in, everything that went into making that middle school. And I'd like to see it succeed, but by the same token, I know how expensive it's been to keep. So I'm just saying, just be careful. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. LaFond.
Chuck Mower, 4 Depot Street. Mahaba. Your first lesson in Arabic. It simply says hello.
Mahaba.
Mahaba. Mabsut. I appreciate your fealty to deference and prudence and parsimony and diligence and all those things. This is, after all, self-government by people that have chosen to live in a community. I did not choose to live here. I was born here. I do, however, choose to stay here. So I've seen a great deal. I have participated in much. And I think it's time that once again somebody raised the clarion call. Yes, there is a war on education. There's been a war on education for the last 50 years. Yes, the school district struggles. Yes, we have provided an adequate public education. We take some pride in some of the things that we have accomplished and promoted and done and taken initiative for. But we've never really invested in education. We've always nibbled around the edges because of our desire to get the cheapest price we can or to defer it as long as we possibly can. And of course, we all know what a dream deferred is. It is time to realize that public education in Merrimack, at the very least, if I might be so bold as to extend it to other communities, north and south, is a juggernaut. We have an ambitious agenda in front of us, as defined by this school board, which is going to require a great deal of increased spending. And while we have a terrific staff that does its best, and then probably does a little bit more, and hunts for grants and hunts for opportunities to find any peanut under any coconut shell they can to reduce the cost of education and prove that they are not spendthrifts with the public dollar. The cost of education is going to continue to go up. The property tax cannot sustain that growth. We knew that 50 years ago. We've been arguing about how to tax in New Hampshire for at least that long, if not much longer. But now we're seeing an intersection with a stone wall. We are either going to sacrifice the advances that we have made, meager as they might seem in some eyes, fragile as we know they all are. How often we have taken 2 steps up and taken 3 steps backwards in the process. It is imperative that the town of Merrimack, the residents of Merrimack, the school district, and our representatives begin to grapple with what is on our immediate horizon in terms of funding education. It simply must be done. It is a critical impact point that we are headed for in the near future. We get wrapped up very easily in trying to do the best job we can as citizens, volunteering on boards, as administrators, digging into this, digging into that, problem solving. Oh my goodness gracious. Problem solving, the art of being a civilized community. But something must be done. The property tax can no longer sustain growth and the effects of growth that we want to enjoy amongst our society here in Merrimack. I figure I'm older than anybody else in this room. I'm still at it. I hope to have a good look at the budget. I hope to add some money to the budget. How does that sound? I'm more optimistic about what we need for real education because I'm tired of paying, quite frankly, as a taxpayer, I'm tired of paying for pavement and cement and this and that and oil and gas and all those things that I know I have to do as a homeowner. But this is a municipal corporation. You don't make decisions here like I do on my kitchen table. I know what I can do without. I know what I have to do without. But a civilized community can't operate on that basis. We simply must advance into the 21st century in a constructive, productive, outcome-producing way that the property tax cannot sustain. I hope my message goes out to all of you in the community, and I hope that the community engages in a discussion that we've let lie far too long. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mower. With that, I will give one last shot, or I will close public participation. I think we're closing it. We will take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will entertain the motion to go into non-public session per RSA 91-A, :3, Roman numeral 2, sections A, B, and C. Made by Brandy, seconded by Naomi. Brandy, how do you vote?
In favor.
Naomi?
In favor?
Andy?
In favor?
Cinda?
In favor.
And I vote in favor. The motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you and good night.